run through a couple of ground rules and then we'll get started. I'm just going to get I say ground rules, but we'll get the stuff kind of out of the way. So so a couple of things. So get a pen and paper and take some notes. That's kind of your best bet at this point. Or if you're going to use your computer, just make sure you're taking notes. It's always a good thing, because again, there's no recording. I'm not recording this. You're not recording this. This is not being recorded. Okay. So secondly, I'm going to be discussing like the landing page, kind of the activity itself, but largely I'm just going to be using that as a platform to discuss modern kind of responsive techniques, and best practices, right? So don't get bogged down worrying about the assignment details. You're looking for overarching themes, concepts, ideas, right? You're looking for responsive web design technique, not specifically worrying about the landing page activity. Okay, so this is an informal demonstration. You're not required to do anything or hand anything in. It's just, this is why I'm here in a plaid shirt and having Stella right now. So just totally relaxed on Friday. Thank you so much, by the way, for showing up, guys. I really appreciate that. This is not a class activity. This is just me being a total nerd, just coming out and talking about something I love to talk about. So thank you for coming and taking part of that. This is not a follow along activity. I'm going to be moving pretty quickly. So sometimes you're going to say, hey, can you go back, and I want to copy down, I missed that part. I'm not going to go back so you can copy things down. Again, that goes against, I don't want to lose control of this assignment, right? So just take down notes of things that are important. Don't worry about the colors and, oh, how did you get that? Worry about the overarching, how the idea of, how we applied a media query, or why the grid worked the way it did, and that kind of thing. That's really what we're looking for, techniques. Questions are totally allowed, but keep them on topic. I'm not going to be discussing assignments or grades, or if my dog comes down, maybe I'll talk a little bit about my dog, but don't, it's just kind of keep them on topic. I don't want to talk about like the last grade or, content management systems, for those of you who have me for that. If you type a question in the chat, type in the main chat. Don't do a private message, because I'm just probably not going to be monitoring that as much. I want everybody to benefit. This is a community classroom right now, so we're all going to be kind of learning off each other and bouncing ideas, and that's the idea. If there's time at the end, I'm going to host a kind of a bit of a Q&A session so that we can all just talk about things and discuss. You can come and go from the keyboard as you please, right? You can come and go. I don't mind that. If you have to go to the washroom, you want to get a drink or whatever, no problem. Again, it's Friday afternoon or whatever it is, like it's wherever you are. Very laid back. There's no worry. Okay, so come and go as you please. Just don't. If you're leaving the room and coming in, then I have to let you in every time, and I have to maintain control. I can't just close the waiting room. So you know what I mean? Just stay. You can leave your keyboard, but stay in the chat or in the Zoom meeting, right? Does that make sense? And lastly, no recording, right? If I find out someone recorded this, I will absolutely forward a complaint to the Dean of Academic Integrity, and that'll likely end your time at Algonquin College. So please don't make me do that. That's really those are the kind of the rules. That's what we got going on. So aside from that, let's look at this like a community activity, something that we're all going to do together. And if you have questions, ask them. By all means, you can turn your mic on and do that kind of thing. Yeah, okay. So is there any questions before we get started? I'm just setting up my notes over here, guys. We're all good? Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much again, guys, for coming. I know it's Friday afternoon. You guys got better things to do than sit around and listen to a nerd talk about web design. I'll try and make it fun as much as possible. You're probably going to see my dog, or at least hear him, because he's noisy. So if you like dogs, and that's a good thing. And otherwise, yeah, just keep it on topic, and let's have a conversation about anything that you want to discuss. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my mic or my camera, and I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we'll just jump right in. Okay. All right, let's see. How do I turn that off? And let's see. What do we do here? Share my screen. That's what I want to do. Okay, give me a second, guys. All over the map right now. It's Friday. I'm just like, I don't know how to do this. Let's see, share screen. There we go. Okay, and I want that one. Perfect. Okay, let me just open up the chat and the participant window. Okay. This side. Oh, there's Jesse. Okay. All right. Perfect. Just do that. Okay. You know what? I've just disabled the waiting room. So if you do get, if for whatever reason, get removed, you can just come, you should be able to come right back in. If you guys notice somebody come in who's like, you don't recognize them or something weird, please let me know so I can just boot them out of here. I don't need, it tastes like socks 43 or something in here being causing problems. Okay. So you guys can you see this, the master files that we have here? Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so we have this is just the download. The only thing I've done here that's different is I've just numbered the mock-up pictures. And I did that in order just simply so that I could simply just, when we want to refer back, it's just easier to do it this way so I can run through them and we can use it as a reference point. Okay. Did everyone saw that when I moved that over, right? The picture? Okay, good. Awesome. All right. Love it. You guys are so on top of it. So what I'm going to do is, this is just the download. I'm going to use this as the basis. So I'm going to start by opening up my Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to drop the file right in just so we have a starting point. And it's only because this is where I have images and things like that. All right, so here's what we got. So the first thing I want to do is I want to kind of take a look and see what I have for assets and just audit my site. That's what I would do first. Okay, so I'm going to pull this over, and I know just because I've seen the assignment before. I know we have a logo in there. We've got colors.png, which actually gives us all the colors. A lot of times they'll just give us the numbers or the something similar like that, so that we know what we're going to be looking for, and those are the things we have to work with. So there's three different breakpoints in this, right? So we have our mobile, and we've got our tablet, and we've got our desktop. Now, the three of these are very, very similar. There's a lot of very similar parts, right? If we look around at this, for example, let's start right at the top. We have the dash logo, right? And it takes up a whole header area on top, right? Same thing here, same thing there. So that's going to be easy to do going forward, right? And if I go back again, we've got this want to be your own boss with the scooter and the apply now. And if we move to the tablet, want to be your own boss, the scooter, the apply now. Okay, that's going to be the same, but we see it'll be a little bit different. We have to apply some grid or flex or something among that section during the desktop breakpoint. Okay, so that's something we have to be aware of going forward. So that's one change we're going to have to make so far. Other than that, fonts, colors, we already have that. Those things, the footer color, the red button, the green button, those things don't change. We're just looking for things that are going to change, right? Because we're going to use mobile first progressive enhancement. We're going to set up all the things that are the same first, and then only just change things that need to be changed at media queries. That's the point. Right. So again, we determined this header is going to be fine. No worries. This is going to be fine. That'll be the same. Even the apply now, the look and feel is largely the same, except for maybe just the width, which, depending on the container. Right. So the only thing we've seen so far is the structure of this middle area is going to change. Right. Now, here's where the big changes are occurring right now in this assignment is in the footer. Okay. The colors are all the same. Everything's, nothing's going to be weird that way. But when we go from mobile to desktop, we're going to see one change. Calculate. The calculate button goes to the side. So that's the one thing that's going to change in this entire mockup, right? Aside from maybe a couple of font size changes, but even then, I'm not even worried. The big thing, the only difference between mobile and tablet that we have, one of two differences, is calculate goes to the side. And does anyone else see the other difference? I'm not talking, some stuff it's hard to tell because we're at different zoom levels, but there's another one other difference that's an alignment thing. Does anyone see what it is? Here's the tableau. I'll go back to mobile.
It is already applied. That is aligned in the center.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the only. So calculate goes over beside, and the already applied goes from a text align left to a text align center. Now you're going to say, oh, Rob, that's crazy. Why are you worried about such a small detail? Because those are the kinds of details that people notice, right? Those are the details that someone's going to say, why isn't that centered? Right? It was centered in the mock-up, because clients are real picky like that sometimes. So it's not the end of the world. I don't think I would have, I'm not going to beat anyone up about it, but those are it's just one of those things. So the only two differences we have in design between mobile and tablet should have been calculate goes beside, and this has to be centered, right? So that means at that breakpoint, there's two things that are going to happen. Center, text line center, and then probably a flex or just a grid, or I'm going to use grid, whatever we would do there. The phone number and email address, phone number and email address changed as order changed as well. Let's see, phone number and email address. Did they? Phone number, email address. Oh, they did. There you go. See, Marina, you picked that up. Awesome. I did not even notice that was a thing. I wouldn't have marked you on that if you did that. That's amazing. Good for you. I've never even noticed that. Email address, phone number, email address, phone number, email address. Okay, well, good for you. 1 gold star. I didn't even pick that up. Show of hands. Anyone else pick that up? I certainly didn't. Yeah, a few people. You guys are on it. See, but again, and I've been doing this for 25 plus years, and that's why I missed that. So that's a kind of thing that a UX designer would have come to me and said, hey, you missed that. You got that wrong. We did that for this specific reason. So that's a good catch, guys. For this, we could change that. I'm going to focus on, just because for brevity, I've got to do this whole thing in probably about an hour and a half. So we'll do that. There's also a background color for the first name input. Is it? I think in this one, it's weird. But if we were to zoom in, you'd see that's a little different. Is it? I don't know if it's just my screen. Anyway, let's just worry about layout for now. There's definitely probably a couple little differences, but those are good catches, guys. Absolutely. Okay, so let's move forward. So we know that between the first and second, the mobile and tablet, the only big changes I'm going to make is I'm going to move that to the center, because that's an easy one. And more importantly, I'm going to move that calculate over to be beside it, right? So those are the big things. Okay, and then when we move between this layout and the final form here, we see that this section in the middle has to go in line, has to be in row, and then this kind of calculate box, or this area here, it stays largely the same, but now the social media links push over. So it's not a lot of things that have to change. Miriam, do you have a question?
Nope, sorry, I just forgot.
No, that's okay. So it's not a lot of things that have to change. When you think about it, we're talking about what? Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 changes. And yeah, there's minor things, the order of the icons. I'm not too worried about those right now. I definitely saw you guys were ordering some of those icons around. I don't know why those would be different. I think maybe the previous professor or the instructional designer who did this was trying to catch you guys or something. I'm not gonna beat you up over that. I'm not worried about that. Let's talk about larger themes, right? Okay, so we all agree that's a pretty good synopsis of the things that we really need to focus on changing, right? One, let's see, this is gonna be centered, calculate goes beside, and then we've got to get this in the desktop is kind of bigger set of differences. So let's start by setting up our code in such a way, our HTML structure. We're not even going to touch the CSS. We're going to start by setting up our HTML structure in such a way that we can move things around as needed. So we're going to have containers with subcontainers, things like that, right? We want to be able to apply flex at some times, but not at others, or grid or whatever we're going to use. I'm going to use grid. I prefer it. It's a lot more powerful. So with that said, I'm just going to move this kind of off screen a little bit, or off to the side. Let's just start like, nope, that's not the right one. I'm going to start like this. And that way we can kind of just see what we're playing with, right? Let me just move this a little smaller. There we go. And we can kind of see what we're trying to build. Okay, so I'm going to start out by, I'm going to create a new file here. Let's see, so new. And I'm going to save it directly into not in the colors, right in the root. I'm going to call it index.html, and it says plain text, so I'll just save it as HTML. Okay, there's a few little finite things I got to do. You know, number one, the first thing I want to do is I never submit anything without a title. You got to have a title, right, guys? I mean, that just makes sense. So if you submit it and it says document or it says, you know, nothing index.html, it's because you didn't add a title. So we got to make sure we do that. I'm just going to say landing page, or actually I'll say dash landing page, because let's pretend this is a functional dash landing page. And okay, I'm not going to even bother hooking up any HTML or any CSS yet. I'm just going to set this up so I can have some structure. So the first thing I want to do is I want to wrap the whole thing in a container, right? Not the whole thing, but most of it. I can see that down here at the bottom, I've got a footer. The footer is going to have a yellow background. Everything else kind of sits inside of a wrapper. Do you guys know what a wrapper is when we talk about a wrapper? I'm not talking about, you know, like music wrapper. I'm talking about like a container or something like that we would give a set width to that would center in the page, as we can see here, right? Even at the larger size, there's space beside. Everything is sitting inside of a defined wrapper or container. You guys see what I mean by that? Great. So that's all that is, right? So, but the difference is that in the footer, we have to have the background color as well. So we're going to have to create a container and then close the container, open the footer, give it a background color, and then put a container back in again. Okay, I'll show you that when we get there. That's the best way to do that. So the header can be standalone or inside a container. This information, because we need to eventually have it go in a row, should be in its own container. And then we can close that container. We have a footer 100% width, yellow background, and then re-add a container again. Because containers, I can just make a class of container with whatever width centered. And we can reuse that across everything. I'm also keeping in mind specificity, right? I want to do those things as well. Okay, let's just build our structure in such a way. Now I've got this, so I want to have a container. I'm just going to start with my kind of container and I'll move my way down. So div with a class of container, right? And because I can see that, I'm going to have the container is going to have everything at the top, but not the footer. I'm just going to go down and add the footer at the bottom. Oh, footwear, footer. All right. And then watch what I do here. Div class equals container inside. Right? Do you see why that would work? I've got the div with the class of container at the top that's going to keep the that's going to center it and add a width. That's all that is going to do. At mobile, it'll be probably 85%. At desktop and tablet, I'll probably add an set width of pixels. But it's going to be the same whether it's in the footer or not. The footer is just going to add yellow. And then inside of that, we're going to put the content inside of some sort of a wrapped container. Same thing as everything above. We just don't have to worry about the yellow. Does that make sense, guys? That's an easy way to do it. Just remember, this is a class. I can reuse it. Okay, so I don't have to worry too much about that. I'll get back to that in a minute. So I'm going to, I've got everything else set here. I'm just going to kind of move in and add some stuff in. I've got this section at the top. It's a logo. So I'm going to actually put it inside of a header. And I'll start with just logo. Actually, no, you know what? I'll just move forward. We got limited amounts of time. So image source equals, I know where it is. So I'll just get to it. Logo. I'll use the PNG. And the alt is, I'm going to say dash logo. All right. Remember, guys, best practices. We're not just copying and pasting. If you're trying to type it quick like a crazy person right now, don't worry about it. Listen to what I'm saying and the concepts I'm trying to give you. And if you have questions about those concepts, then that's what we want to talk about, right? Okay. So we've got a div class of container and right up here. And then inside we're going to have a header. That's just this with our logo, right? I could wrap it in an anchor tag or something like that. That's fine. There's a good question. Shouldn't the container have a different name for each? Why would I need to give it a different name? I can use specificity, footer.container or just container. Let's add the CSS and you'll see what I mean. Let's start by doing that. I'm going to go in, I'm going to create a style sheet. So let's just do that. That'll probably help. Then you can kind of see why it would work a little better. I'm just going to put it into the actual root. I should put it into a style folder, but I'm going to put it in the root because I'm a bad boy. Okay, styles.css. This is just going to be a style sheet. Now I'm going to add that in right here. Let's see. Oh boy, link rel equals style sheet. And then, oh, come on now, href equals styles.css, because relative to where we are, it's just a sibling. It's not into a CSS folder, right? Okay. So let's just see, why did I not give them both different names? Well, because I didn't have to, right? We're starting mobile first. So let's just say, what do you think? Say 85% and then centered. That's probably a reasonable assumption here, right? The whole thing takes up probably, or 90% and centered. I'm going to say 85% and centered. Let's just try that out. So the container, any element that has a, oh boy, that has a width of container, or a class of container, is going to have a width of 85%, and it's a block level element. So I'm just going to center it, right? So it doesn't matter up here, 85% centered. There it is. We'll just assume that that's fine. There's 85% centered, right? Then I close that off. I go into the footer. Footer, let's just hit that up. Footer. Background color is going to be, let's see, let's grab it. FFF D8C. And I'm just going to do this with 100%, just so we can get the idea. You starting to see how it comes together now? The footer is just going to have a color and it's going to go all the way across. The container, whether it's in the main section or in the footer, is only doing one thing. It's creating width and centering. So when I put it inside the footer, footer handles the yellow, and this just centers the exact same way as the content above does. Do you see what I mean by that? They don't have to be all in a row. Does that make sense, Robbie? Okay, I just want to make sure. The idea here is that we're separating our presentation from our content, right? So it's like saying, here's our container. The container has two jobs: center and add width. So I can put it anywhere I want to. It's always going to do one thing: center and add width. So if I have it at the top part here, adding width and centering, that's fine. And then I can put it inside footer, because footer is going to go 100% width by default. I technically don't need that because footer is a block level element, and it has a background color of yellow. So background color of yellow with a centered element with width. Robbie, question?
Yes. So I noticed that you have defined the width, which I did also on my CSS as 500 pixels, but that you're defining for all different screen size, or just for the mobile?
So this is exactly where we're getting at now too, is that's a great question. We're always doing mobile first. Always going to do mobile first. If you have a max width, then you're creating a ceiling. If you have a maximum width of 900 pixels, then what happens at 901 pixels? So minimum width is always better. So we're starting off with defaults, and then we're just going to override them later. Okay, we'll see that in action. So I'm just going to leave styles alone. I'm going to go back to just creating my content. We'll get back to the styles in a minute and talk about those kind of progressive enhancement. Let's just get our content in so we can move forward, because this is a little bit tedious, right? So we've got our header with our image. Inside of that, we have this section here, right? The header with the logo is fine. And then we've got this section here. Now we know that later on, it's going to change. Not at the tablet, stays the same. But once we get it here, we need a way to get it into inline, right? And the best way to do that is with greater flex, because we don't use floats. Position absolute is not what you use for layout. We just use a proper layout tool, grid or flex. And in order to do that, we have to put these child elements inside of a parent container that contains that grid of flex, or grid, or the display of grid or flex. You know what I mean? Does that make sense, guys? If you're confused, let me know. These are child elements. I'm going to call this welcome, and I'm going to call this apply. This is going to be a div with a class of welcome. This is going to be a div with a class of apply. And in order to get those lined up in a row, I need to put them inside of a parent container that has a display of grid or display of flex. So I need to have yet another containing element. So I'm just going to use a main tag for that, right? Let's just go back and we can put that over here, right? Because the main tag is going to do nothing until I tell it to. So I'm going to use this structure. I'm only going to really tell it to be grid or flex once we hit desktop. But for now, it's just going to be a container. So let's keep going. I'm going to have two sections inside of here, right? Section class equals, we determined the first one was going to be called welcome. And the next one is going to be called apply. Now, really important thing here, guys. Take a look. What do you guys suppose the BG means in BG image? Be good?
Background.
Background. So many people shoved it in the foreground. Scooter.image or whatever. So many people shoved it in the tried to put it in the HTML like it was structure when that was, I mean, talk about extra work for yourself. Look at overlaps over here. Oops. It can very easily be, oops, I'm so used to, it can very easily be a background image in the main or on the body, and then just apply a margin bottom on this. How much easier would that be to do, right? Than trying, because otherwise you have to put it in here as an image in the HTML, and then you have to try and figure out how to overlap it, and you've got opacity issues, and you're doing position abs, so all these weird things. It's clearly in the background. We can see it is. So the best and most obvious solution for that is to make it a background image, right? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to make it a background image. And I mean, there's there's a million ways to do these things, right? So I'm going to just get rid of that. I'm going to take that scooter in the CSS later, and I'm going to add it into the main as a background image. And then I can just adjust the position from the top at each breakpoint. Too easy. Give it a width or whatever. So here we've got our section, welcome apply. And that's I have to do the footer, but that's essentially it aside from the content. So let's just quickly add the content in. Before I do that, this is my basic structure, right? Does that make sense, guys, so far? You guys with me? All right. Okay, and everyone's going to tackle this a little bit differently. Dina, do you have a question? No? Okay. If you guys do, feel free, just blurt it out, no problem. Just let me know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to continue on with the welcome. I'm just going to grab it really quickly. So it's an H1 tag, and it's actually, you know what I'm going to do? We all know what it is. I'm going to use an H1 in a paragraph. So I'm going to copy it from my script notes over here and paste it. If you're not if you're trying to type everything along, well, don't try and type everything. Okay. Want to be your own boss, and then a paragraph that says start today. I can use HTML or use CSS to say main or .welcome p and change the size of it. No problem. Now the apply is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to start out very simply with the apply itself is going to be the white with the rounded borders with the background. Easy enough. I'll just make that whole little nice looking box as its own little section with a class of apply. And so it's just going to be content inside of it. Nothing really changes, really, right? Apply now. You guys get the idea. I'm going to show you guys a trick that I like to do when I'm building forms, and it'll hopefully make things easy. Enter your info below to get started. Okay, here we go. Now, whenever I'm building a form, I'm going to start with a form tag, right? Anytime I'm building a form, the big problem is everything wants to go in line, right? Let's take a look what I mean by that. You always want to have a label. So I'm going to start with the first one, label for equals first name, because that's the first one. And then it says first name. I'm just going to hide this later. I'm going to use CSS to say display hide. All labels, display none. And that way it's here in the HTML. Screen readers and accessibility devices are going to see it, but it's not visible in the actual output. That's a trick we can use. And I'm going to add this input type equals. It's a text. The ID has to match the label. That's how these are label ties to this. It knows that this is the first name with that label based on the ID matching the label for part. I'll also make a matching class because it makes sense. And then lastly, the placeholder equals, and I think it says first name, just like that. Okay, so first name. All right. So again, all I'm doing is just making this input. It doesn't look pretty. Okay. Now, when I start adding more of these, they just go in a big line. It becomes really ugly. And what I want to do is I want to make them appear in a row. I want to make them all kind of go in a row at all times with some spacing between them. And the easiest way for me to accomplish that, and this is a nice pro tip going forward, is to wrap each one of these inputs with label in a div, just an empty div. You can give it a class, but you don't need to because you can use specificity. All we're using this for is because it's a block level element. It allows us to put spacing underneath. I can say all divs inside of a form have a margin bottom of 1 rem. That everything in the form, all divs are going to have nice spacing, right? It allows us to have a level of specificity. I always do this, okay? I'm going to just copy and paste everything I have, and then I'll go through it. So I'm going to copy my whole form from over here and paste it in because I'm not going to go through the whole thing. All right, we got a form, right? There's the apply now and the enter your info and the whole form. Now let's scoot down. Let's talk really quick. I even do it for the terms. Now the terms I had to add a class. We'll discuss why that is later. I did that specifically. Well, we'll discuss why later. Okay. Notice I reversed the order. The label goes after the input in this case. And I told this one specifically, hide all divs, all labels and all divs, except for terms. I want to show that one. That's why I did it. Okay. And of course, there's no label for the input. Okay. And so does everyone kind of see how we did that? I'll talk about the input in a second. The submit button in a second. Right? Fairly straightforward. I just copy and pasted, but I just did it. I put a div around each one of my inputs, and I'm going to use CSS to hide the label. That's all that is. Okay. I agree to the dash terms. I just had to swap the order from label input to input labels so that I had the label. And then I give this particular div a class so that later on, or even label, so that later on I can say, I want any label inside a div with a class of terms. Instead of display none and hiding it, I'm going to say display block and show it. Or in this case, inline block. Okay, that's just, these are minor things you learn how to do later. That's just why I did that. And lastly, the input. You're going to notice that on the input, I have button, two classes, a class of BTN and a class of BTN green. And I did that because button has the same behavior. I'm going to just like container, I'm going to be reusing the BTN class here and here. Drive with us and calculate, because they both have rounded borders. They both have uppercase text. They both have padding, right? And the difference that I'm going to use here is that they both have button, but one's going to be button green and the other one's going to be button red. And that'll just basically adjust background color and probably the text color. It's going to say all buttons and this specific button. It just keeps me from having to rewrite like the border radius and the padding and the text transform uppercase and all that kind of stuff on both things, right? It's like this reason that I don't have a footer and you know, like this. They're both doing the same thing. Oops, I did that last time too. So why wouldn't I just use the same class, right? CSS is all about trying to keep things minimal and nice and reusable, modular design. Okay. Last thing we have is the status right here, and I'm going to use this little div. I'm going to say text align center, text align left. It's just a paragraph. In this case, it's a little smaller, so I just use the standard small tag. It just makes things a little smaller, right? Of course, it is a link. It's obviously a link. Check your application status here. I mean, that to me says a link. Sometimes people use a span and just change the color red. I mean, it's a link, right? So I make A with an href, not just A. That's not going to help anything. And that's the whole form. Okay. Is there any questions about the form itself? Do you guys see how that would be useful, having the divs? Why did I use input instead of button? Great question. I use input because it's clickable. Button doesn't do anything. You could use button, but button requires JavaScript to operate. So button will do nothing for me. If I click button, HTML doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't know, are we submitting? Are we resetting? I'm gonna, like put lipstick on, who knows? It doesn't know what it's gonna do. An input in the name, the type, it submits or it resets, right? It knows what to do right away. And it's just gonna say, okay, I'm gonna submit to form action equals process form.php. Right? So it knows, okay, I'm going to submit to this form to let the script process the form. That's why I use the input. I always prefer to use inputs. Buttons are cute, but to me, an input type, plus it keeps everything specific, so I can attack everything in one CSS style. It's personal choice. I also just don't like having to write extra JavaScript for no reason. Okay, any other questions before I move on from that section? Because the top part here is done now. Okay, so you guys sure? The main and the header, right? The main and the header, which is basically the D logo, and then this whole top part before the footer. You guys have any questions about anything we accomplished? I know I moved pretty quickly, but really all I did was copy things down, talk a little bit about why I used a main inside so that I could make the want your own boss and the apply now eventually to be beside each other. That way I can just give this one a grid or a flex to make those two child elements, welcome and apply, go beside each other, right? And I talked about adding a div between each one. Look how clean it is. It's just easy. Okay, and I can use that kind of ease and that cleanliness to in the CSS to my benefit. So let's go take a look at the footer. This is just, again, putting high level structure out. We're going to get into the CSS here shortly. So let's look at this footer. Now we have to do a couple of things here. It doesn't have to get too complicated, but we know that the calculate has to go beside this eventually, and this has to go over to the side eventually, right? When I say this, I mean the social media buttons. So really we have a couple of different areas, which is we've got this kind of box with the calculations in it, and then we've got the social media links, and that's how I'm going to set this up. We've got the container, which is just wrapping everything and giving it a width, right? We know what that does already. So I need to have a couple of different sections. I'm going to call them a div with a class of calculate. Calculate is just going to be see how much you can earn, how many hours per week, hours, city, and calculate button. Okay. And then also I'm going to have a div with a class of social links, we'll call it. Okay. That's all we need, because this is just going to be, I can use the form to grid this or flex it, right? And then I can just push that over to the right. Like, it's all pretty easy to manipulate at this point. You'll see when we get there. And there's a lot of ways, just don't overcomplicate it. That's the big thing. If I move to the next size, we can see that all I have to do in the first case is move this over. So I'll go into calculate and I'll say, this is going to have a grid. And instead of being, I did it again. Sorry, guys. Oh my gosh, I'm all over the map here. Okay, here we go. Right, we're going to see it in action. But I'm going to set up a grid in here, and I'm going to say I want 2 rows, and I'm going to probably break it up into 3 columns or something. And then once we get to the next breakpoint, I'm going to say remove the bottom row, so that row will be no row, and I'll just I'm going to say like hours, city, calculate in my grid template area. It's an easy way to accomplish that. And then once I go to the next breakpoint after that, right, I can just leave that as is. And then I tell social links itself, I can actually use the container to grid and push that over. So there's a lot of options to make it go quick, but you're going to see to make it work, but you're going to see once we get there. So I'm just going to put this simple structure in. I'm going to copy and paste it in because it's all a lot of the same. Okay. See how much you can earn with dash, paragraph with a strong tag. How many hours do you want to drive this week? Same thing, not bold. And then the form, right? Form with a div. In this case, label for hours, right? It's all, you guys get the idea. City. And then lastly, submit. Button red. So button is rounded corners, some padding, text transform, uppercase. Button red is red background, white text. Probably a little bit different on padding too, but I'm not going to get too far down the rabbit hole today. And the social links, well, that's easy peasy. Again, I can just copy that in, and it's just, I'm not worried about the ordering, guys. Don't stress too much about the ordering. I just threw it in. I know it's probably the wrong order. I did them in the order they were in here. That's it. That's the structure. Okay. So I just put it in here. Now let's just take a look without any, well, I've got some here, so let me just comment that out, but without any styles, let's go see what it looks like. There it is. So even if the style sheet is broken, even if somebody has styles turned off, if somebody's on really low, bad connection, you can still use this site effectively in a nice order that's hierarchical, logo at the top, social media at the bottom. It all still makes sense. And as a side bonus, look at the order, guys. It's already mobile. it's already in mobile shape. I don't have to add any media queries, any grid or anything like that, really, aside from a little bit between these two things. But I don't have to add any real structure or layout or media queries or flex grid, anything really to make this work. It is mobile by default out of the box. That's the key thing here. If I was using max width, I would have to start with everything applied up here. And then I would be working backwards. And the worst part is that if you say max width, 1800 pixels, and it looks like, this, what happens when you hit 1801? Then you have to make another breakpoint. But then what happens when you go past that? The max width is a danger, because when you hit the max width, you're hosed. You will always have to create another media query, because at some point someone's going to hit that ceiling and go past it. And then it'll look, because you've gone past it, it'll say, like, if you have a max width of 1800, it means, if I said maximum width media, just by example, max width 1800 pixels, which is massive. Okay. What happens when somebody goes to 1801? Well, this says apply CSS as long as this applies. So once I up to a maximum width of 1800 pixels, this CSS will work, right? Once I get to 1801, it's like it never existed. It says, oh, it's not part of this criteria anymore, so don't apply it. Which means you'll have to go, okay, well, now I need a new one. That media up to a maximum, you say from a minimum width of 1801 up to 25. That doesn't make any sense. In the way we're doing it right now, it works out of the box to be mobile first. Okay, wait a minute. Where's my stuff, guys? Okay. Yeah, so it works out of the box. It may not look perfect. I have to add some CSS. I'll get to that, because this is always going to be the same size. The apply now is going to look the same. The yellow footer in the background, like, that's all going to be the same, right? We can kind of see when I put this stuff in again, just with a couple little bits and pieces. Let me just, there we go. You can see it's starting to, go places a little bit, right? We have the 85% centered. It works well, and some other stuff. Do you guys see what I mean by that? We start mobile, and then as we go forward, all we have to do in the case of mobile to tablet to desktop, mobile to tablet, all we have to do is center this part and then take the calculate button and move it over. We're going to fix this in a second. That's all we'll have to do. Everything else will be set. It'll be like, I can tell you how many lines of code it's going to be. It's going to be that particular media query we're going to affect the container to change the width. We're going to adjust the scooter in the background. We're going to center this, and then I'm going to set up some grid down here. It's 4 properties. I'm going to have 4 styles. It's going to change that whole breakpoint. So let's keep going with that. Let's set up the basic design that we want, because the styles are done. You guys agree that that's the style, the HTML is done now? It's all it makes sense that it's in the same order we want it to appear mobile. Now all we have to do is apply some styles. Am I confusing you guys too badly? How are we doing here? Let's take a little check-in, see how everyone's doing. I know it moves quick. All we're really doing is putting our structure in. The CSS is kind of where I want to focus. Okay, is this helpful so far, guys? Just thinking about how to start things off. We just want to make it without any styles applied. We want the structure to look the same, because almost every mobile site is going to look like this. It's a big column, right? If I had things, if my mobile site looked like this, like take your phone, put it up next to the screen right now. Imagine how small that would look, right? And once I go down to a smaller size, you can see that's probably, for me, that's about the same width as my actual phone. So that's good. I can use this. So not a lot of different things like that. I don't have to worry about. Okay. I'd have to hit my phone would be horizontal, but then it's probably this size, which, notice, still doesn't have too much in terms of, right? In terms of column. This really is the same structure. When I look at the two, they're really going to be almost identical between what I have here and what I have here. The only difference is a little bit more room down here to determine for a tablet, or for flipping your phone to a landscape mode, which is on its side, right? Nothing really has to change. So let's set up all these defaults so that we can just go in and just quickly add a couple of media queries and be done. That's really all it has to be. So we're not worrying about having to go and overwrite all kinds of stuff. That's such a pain when you're using media query or maximum width media queries or ranges. Only have the CSS apply between 780 and 1281. Why? Because then it doesn't work sometimes, right? It's better just to leave everything as it is. And then if I want to change the height of this, all I have to do is change the size of that. Everything else can stay the same. I'm not overriding. Let's just do it. Okay, so I'm going to, let's get this back here and move this back into mobile zone. There we go. And okay, I'm going to start setting up some basic things, right? I'm also going to have to go over to index.html. One of the first things I want to do definitely is I want to add a normalize. I don't like reset. It makes everything go wrong. I'll show you the difference between the two. I don't like it. It's a real pain in my keister, to be honest. So let's just try Maya reset. And I'm going to add CDN because I want the content delivery network. I don't want to copy it all in. I'm just going to put a link in my head to their file. Show you what I mean. Here it is. Here's the Maya reset in a nice linkable file. It's even minimized, which is nice. If I go and look at this, let's just see what that looks like. Copy tab, minimize. I just removed all the extra white space and everything, so it actually saves space. Remember, guys, I always tell you that. Make sure you're validating and cleaning your code. And this is, there's tools they can use to do that. You don't have to worry about it so much. But let's go ahead and I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to copy the link tag. And I can, go right into my HTML, and I'm going to put it at the top here above my style sheet, obviously above it. Let's just see what happens. There it is. It gives me the whole thing with some extra goodies. Now watch what happens to my, I'm going to move it off screen here so you guys can see it live. Watch what happens to all this when I save this. It all just becomes chunky. I don't like that. It's all really, there's no space underneath things. I don't know. That's just, I don't have the time or day to go back. I just want it to be consistent across all browsers. Yeah, I just want consistent across all browsers. And for that to take effect, the best thing I can do is use normalize. Normalize is great. So I'll just go back to here. I'm going to say, up in here, I'm going to say normalize. There it is. And I can copy it direct. Oh, that's a node module. I don't want that. I'm going to say normalize.css CDN. There we go. Oh, there it is. Okay. There it is. Normalize.css. This is a nice piece of code. What normalize? So reset takes all styling away. Normalize takes it away and then also adds it back. So it still has the same effect, but it means everybody, it'll specifically say margin on the paragraphs, margin bottom 1.4 rem or whatever. So every browser is following the same set of rules rather than just peeling everything away. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that in here, remove what I just had, and I'm just going to instead paste in normalize. Okay, I'm going to move that over here. Let's see the difference again. I'm going to save it. Normalize, right? Every browser is going to follow the same set of rules because normalize it tells it specifically, H1s are going to be this size. And so every browser says, oh, okay, I'm not guessing now I know. And then I don't have to go back also and rewrite styles for all that. I can overwrite things I want, but this looks a lot better already. Agreed? Save yourself the work. Work smart, don't work hard. Normalize is oftentimes a nice, easy solution. Can you use that for your assignments instead of the other one? Yeah, everyone's been using reset. I don't know. To me, I always use normalize. I don't know if they didn't show you that in responsive web 1. Oh, okay. Well, I would have. Now you know. It's normalize.css. It does the exact same thing as reset. And now it talks about and then adds it back in. Now, you know what, though, guys? A lot of this is learning how to walk before you run. And now that you've stripped everything away and you had to rebuild it, it's the same thing in this course. At the end of this course, I'm going to show you a tool that's going to blow your mind because you don't have to write any code. It does it all for you. It's called Bootstrap. And it's just as long as you know what classes are, it's an absolute game changer. But you need to know how to do all the things first. So you learned how to do a reset and build everything up. Now we're gonna get there. And we're going to learn how to, now that you know how to use the reset tool. I trust that you guys do. So let's just assume you do and move forward with normalize. A lot easier. All right, guys, I am getting way off the beaten path. We might go a little later than that. My apologies if we do. I'm going to try really hard not to. I'm a nerd for this. Okay, I did that. I also have one other thing we really want to do inside of our HTML, right? And that is, I know we're going to be using Montserrat font. And I know that because when I go into here, it tells me in the fonts, it gave me Montserrat and all these different options. Montserrat is openly available in Google Fonts. So that's the first thing I would do is I would go to Google Fonts and say, is it available as a CDN, as a delivered font? It is. Okay. And in fact, I only need a regular version and a bold version anyway. So I'm going to add those in. Let's see how we do that. Move that out of the way. And okay, I'm just going to go get the link for it and we'll add it in. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say fonts. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say Montserrat, and there it is. So now I can just use it this way, even better. But I only need 2 versions of this font. I could download the whole thing. I'm not going to do that. That's a lot of a pain, to be honest with you. This is the website that's going to be on the web. So we'll just let the web do its thing. I'm going to use regular, 400. And I'm also going to use bold, which is 700. Now, see, I've added 2 fonts. Well, I've added 2 variants of the same font, Montserrat, regular, and bold. Now, I can import directly in. Again, and be careful with the import. If I add import, I don't into my style sheet. I don't need the style. I can just put this whole thing in, and it has to go right at the very top of my CSS. Okay, nothing else before it. I'm just fine with link. I'm going to grab this link, copy it, and I'm going to paste this right into the head of my HTML. My HTML, as my father would say. Okay, so I'm not going to put it after my style sheet. I put it before my style sheet. Actually, first thing I want to do, guys, is normalize, reset, build back up, right? And then I'm going to add in my fonts. I'm going to add in my Google Fonts, and then I'm going to have my style sheet, right? Always put your style sheet after everything else because you want to load it and then you can access it. Here's a question. If the fonts are provided in the file, why not use the local fonts? Well, you could. I'm done. If you want to do a thing, you can go to Font Squirrel and try and download and do all those things, or you can do what I just did and it took 8 seconds. Which one do you prefer? Right? Like time is money. When you're a freelancer, time is money. So yeah, I could load it in, but I have to go and then I have to upload it and then I have to go through all the hassle of all that. Just use Google Fonts. If you're connected to the internet, which you're going to be because we're building a website on the internet, you know, unless you're building an internal intranet or something. Like I had to build at one point a technician's intranet for Microsoft. That was a fun job. And they weren't connected to the internet. It was only going to be on a local area kind of network. So I couldn't rely on those. In that case, for sure, I had to grab the font, put it in so that whenever the technician logged in, it would open that font file and load it all up because they weren't connected to the internet by design. Most webs, this is meant to capture people's information on the internet. So you're going to be connected to the internet. So might as well just use Google Fonts. All right, moving on. So I've added that in. Now it also says, here's how I would grab it. I'm going to grab this font as well, how I would apply it. So it shows me how to apply the link. So I've added that in and it shows me the rule set to use to add that particular font. If I had added multiple more fonts, it would fix it. It would tell me what to add. So for now, this is what I have, just the one. I'm only using Montserrat. Okay, this is stuff you probably would have covered in typography in responsive web 1. I'm going to add it into my CSS because it makes sense. So I like putting things in order over here. I'm not going to add any comments because this is just for me anyway. I'm going to start with the body and I'm going to put a font family. Now this is okay, Montserrat, sans serif, but I always like 3. I always put 3. A custom font, a backup system font. I'm going to choose Helvetica, and then the font family, sans serif. Montserrat doesn't have any serifs, so it's sans serif. A close variation that if Montserrat for whatever didn't load, I'll use Helvetica. And if that doesn't load, just give me any sans serif font that's on the computer. It's called redundant backup. Or, you know, we're using, talking about redundancy. If something doesn't work, you've got a backup in place. If the font we want specifically doesn't load, grab something. I'm going to tell it which one to grab. I can even use multiples. Well, Helvetica isn't there. Let's try Arial, right? And then if that's not there, then any old sans serif will do. Okay. That's a best practice going forward. Because if you just do this, what happens if Monster Font doesn't load? It's going to go right back to the default. What's the default? It's Times New Roman. This looks nothing like Times New Roman. So we just try and be a little more specific, a little more deliberate. While we're on the body, this is white back here, but there's a little different color. It's grayish, right? Would you guys agree? It's a little bit off-white in the background. That color, yeah, that color exists, right? If we look at the color palette, like I can see it here in the mock-up, so I know it's different. So I'm not going to leave it as white. I'm going to go into the colors and say, oh, look, there's an off-white color, F7, F7, FF. Okay. F7, F7, FF. All right, let's go see how we're doing here so far. Where is my, there it is. Okay. All right. Not amazing, but we got our font in place. We've got our background color in place. Everything's looking good. All right. Now, I'm fine with that. Now, before we get into any layout or anything, there is something else I want to do. We're starting already to work with widths and things like that. So I'm going to go right to the very top of this file, just because I like to always do this. And I'm going to say, use the star. What does the star mean, guys? Do you know what that, anyone? When I add the asterisk or the star, what does that mean in CSS world? It means everything. Yeah, everything. That's right. Yeah, it just means every single thing. So everything in here, there's one rule that I want to apply to everything. And that rule is box sizing, border box. Okay. And what that does is it defeats the box model. It's like, it's not a hack, it's deliberately there. It defeats the box model. Really quickly, if I have a div and the div has a width of 500 pixels, how wide is that box? 500 pixels, right? What happens if I give it a padding of 10 pixels? How wide is that box now? Is it still 500 pixels?
Yep. Yep. This is 500 pixels.
Yeah. How about now?
510.
Is it?
510 pixels.
Well, check this out. Now it's 510 pixels. Now it's 510 pixels. Padding says all sides. Left, right, top, bottom. The width is actually 10 for the left and 10 for the right. It's 520. Right? 10 for each side. Look at this way. Let me do it this way. 10 pixels top, 10 pixels right, 10 pixels bottom, 10 pixels left. Right? Right and left, 10 pixels each. So now that's going to break everything for us, right? When I'm relying on this particular element to be 500 pixels, well, that's going to break everything. So when I add box sizing border box, what it does is it says, if you have a width set, instead of using and give padding or margin, instead of pushing it outwards, we're going to push that inwards. So the padding will go in, and we're going to constrain this so that it never goes beyond what the actual width you set. It basically says, whatever the width is, use that instead of the box model, which adds padding onto it. Okay, that's what it does. It's a really simple thing. So it says, in this case, the width is going to change. By default, the width will change when you add padding and when you add border and when you add outline. Okay, but if you have box sizing border box, it's going to say, ignore all of those things, make it stay the width that I've set, and just push the content in by, in this case, 20 pixels. So the content will be fitting in 480, which is 500 minus 10 on the left and 10 on the right. But the actual box is still only be 500, because that's border box sizing border box tells it. Width is the ultimate one. All right. So I'm going to put that in there. That's just a backup, little extra for you. I just like adding it. It just makes sense to me. You don't have to, but it just saves me having to do math down the road. If I tell it to be 280 pixels, it'll be 280 pixels. And if I add padding, it's not going to break that. Okay. How many times have you done something? You say, well, why is it big? It doesn't fit anymore. There's a scroll bar. It's because you added some padding, and now your 100% is 100% plus 20 pixels, which is, I can't do the math. We can't add that, but it's larger than the space available. Nope. You shouldn't be copying this down anyway. If you're trying to copy along, don't do that. You're missing the point. If you're copying along, you're not seeing the big picture. You're getting focused on details, right? We're talking about concepts here. Okay, so And honestly, I don't want you copying along. That's not going to do any good. Okay, so so we have this set up right now. We're just going to continue on. I just wanted to add that in. We've got the background color, the font family is perfect. We've set our container. We can just override that later once we hit our next breakpoint. Let's focus, start in the top. I'm going to leave the footer just where it is. I'll move it down. Let's start at the top and get this header image done. So I'm going to use the lowest possible specificity, header image. Header image. Come on, Rob. There we go. Okay. And I don't want to get bigger and smaller. I want it to be a certain size. Ideally, I would resize it, use proper image technique. For the purpose of what we're doing right here, this is beyond I don't want to get down the rabbit hole with it. I'm going to give it just a width of 110 pixels and a height of auto. Okay. It's kind of like max width, whatever, but this is going to just lock it at that height. Right. If I move this over, no, it's going to save it because I'm in the wrong one. Right. I would say that's good enough for our needs. Right. I just saved it. So it no matter what size we have, it's going to stay that size. I'm fine with that for our needs. Okay. So don't worry too much about that. I would probably opt to use responsive image code for this instead, but header image in this case is just going to be a set height. Okay. Set width. Now let's just set some basic fonts and stuff like that. I'm going to, I'll just copy and paste it because again, we're just setting up some basic font sizes, right? Okay, bigger H1, smaller H2. You guys get the idea, right? All right. So I'm just setting up some basic structure without even looking at the HTML or the output. You should be able to kind of tell what's going on here as it is, right? Okay, let's look at the, where are we at here? Do I want to use the main first? No, I don't want to. I'll get to the scooter image in a second. Okay. I want to do that after. I just want to set everything else up. I'm going to work on the apply now box and get that looking like this white box. So let's do that. And then we can just add a margin bottom on this welcome container, right? Remember we have a section with a class of welcome. That's this one here. I'll add a margin body and put this in the background. And then the apply. I want to make the apply look like that white box. So that's my goal right now. So let's do that. In the styles, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say apply. Now I'm going to background color is white, right? These are all things you guys probably know. Let's give it a border radius of 1. Oops, I'll spell it right. A radius of 1 rem. There's a box shadow involved, right? There's a background. Do you guys know about this box shadow? You guys learned about box shadow? A little bit, okay. So I'll just talk through it. I don't want any horizontal offset. I don't want any vertical offset. I want to be, as you can see, it's right in the middle. It's a little bit over the side. We can do that. Let's just say 1 pixel offset from the top, 1 pixel offset from the bottom, or from the right. And then I want a blur of 10 pixels, and I'm going to use kind of a dark gray because it's going to be blurred. Let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, I could probably give it a little more offset. I'm not going to quibble about details right now. I am going to quibble about details because that's the kind of guy I am. We can see that's kind of, we're getting there. I could tweak it, but you guys get the idea, right? These two cover horizontal and vertical offset. This is the amount of blur. This is the color you want to use to create the shadow. Let's add some padding. Now, because I did the border box thing, I'm in good shape. I can tell it wherever I want to. I know what it's going to be, so I normally would just guess. I know what I want it to be, so I'm just going to plop that in. There we go. That's the padding I want to. Let's just see what happens when I just to kind of see if I can prove a point here. I'm going to see what happens when I remove the box sizing border box. Move it over here, save it. That didn't really change just because it's inside of a container, so I'm okay. Anyway, yeah, I'm good. So it's good to have anyway. We're set. All right, and that's it. It's already centered because it's inside the container. We're pretty close. Okay, and I'm just adding some color or some basic styling. The next thing I want to do here in this case is I want to affect the form, right? So I'm going to have the form look. I'm just setting up basic design styles, guys. I know this is going to be a bit tedious. I really rather talk about the layout, but we got to do it. So let's see, form div, which is, remember, we wrapped everything inside of a div. Everywhere there's a form, I want to affect the div. Okay. And what I want to do with this div is I want to add margin on the bottom. How much? 0.85 rem. When I go back and look what it does, now I have nice spacing underneath. Right. So nice spacing underneath. We might as well use this opportunity to get rid of the label as well. Okay, that's this part here. Let me show you what happens, why label isn't, when you say the label has to be tied to it. When I click on the name, it actually activates that field. That's an accessibility thing. Also, tab and reverse tab, it just ties them up. But I don't need them for this right now. I'm just going to get rid of them. And I'm going to get rid of them by just saying anywhere where there's a label, anywhere on the website, right? Minimum specificity, right? Here we're at 0002. I don't need to have a class on it. I can just lowest specificity. So right now, this is the lowest it gets. Anything with a label, I want to hide it. Let's see. Gone. Getting nice and clean now. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh, it's caught behind the, no, it's caught behind the box. There we go. All right, I'm getting down the rabbit hole. Okay, so we got a few more things we want to do here. I can adjust a few more little bits and pieces. I'm just actually going to take a second, just because I have them in my code, and I'm going to adjust the size for these guys really quickly. You know, it doesn't even matter. Let's not even worry about it. Let's just get this thing done as quick as possible so we can talk about the responsive behavior. That's the key. Okay. In this case, so we've got the where's the terms here? Let's go over here. Yeah. So we've hidden the terms here, right? We've hidden the label on everything, but that kind of gives us a problem, because now this box, the terms and conditions are hidden away, right? We want to be able to see those. So let's add them in. You know what I mean? Like there's no label. We said everywhere there's a label, hide it, but I want this one to show up. Right? And you can see I agree to dash terms. And that's why I gave this one its own class, div terms in this case. So I can tell it specifically to make that label show up. And also not just show up, but I want it to be in line. And I can do that pretty simply. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say, specifically, I want the label inside the class of terms, right? The label inside anything with the class of terms. There it is. Agree to the terms. I want that to be in an inline block. Okay. Display inline block, and I'm going to give it a little spacing as well, just because I know it's going to be there. 8 pixels. Right. There we go. So now I told it to display by, instead of saying display none, I said inline block, which means it's now going to be inline. That's all it means, right? If I just said block, it's going to be 100% width, so it's going to go on its own line. I don't want that. I want it in a line. Okay. This is just years and years of practice, guys. So don't worry too much. So I've got that. There's a few other little weird issues, but we'll deal with them later. I'm just going to move forward a little bit more. I want to make these look a little more like that. So let's just fix that really quickly. I'm going to go to input type equals, type equals text. So any input with a type of text, might as well do the same for a checkbox. Notice, guys, I used a checkbox, not a radio. And I use a checkbox because a checkbox can be turned on and off. If I use the round one, the radio, it can't. It's only one way. I can't turn it off. So in this case, a checkbox is the right solution, because it allows us to choose one or the other. Just a little something I wanted to bring up. Okay, so anywhere we have an input type of a text or input type of text box, I want to apply the same basic thing. I want to have a little bit of border radius. I'm going to say 8 pixels because I've done this already. I don't want to have any border around it. We can see there's no border there. Okay, border none. I'm going to say background color is going to be the same. Because we're using a white background here, I want the background color to match the actual background. Or I could say CCC, that would be fine too. Just some sort of a gray, that's fine by me. And finally, a little padding is just going to keep the text from the edge of the box. I hate when anything touches the edge of something else. It's very yucky to me. So I'm just going to put a little padding, 10 pixels. I'm going to save this. Let's go see what we got. I don't like that. I'm going to make that the same. That's no bueno. There we go. That's the one. Much better. Okay, much better. Right. So I have another issue, right? These are too short. I want them to be able to always to stretch with the size of the container, right? 100% width. So I'll quickly do that as well. I know it seems like I'm getting mired down in the weeds, guys, but I can't help it. I cannot help it. I want to show you guys some best practices. I'm just kind of working my way down, right? I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just working my way down and addressing little bits at a time, focusing on one thing at a time. First thing was the structure. Then I can work on, this is always going to be gray background. It's always going to be 100% width inside this container, right? So once I get the default set, the only thing I have to worry about is arranging things. Placeholder to move the text in place. Well, you don't even need that, guys, because placeholder is there. The placeholder tag in HTML5 exists, right? That's just placeholder. You just say in the actual input, you just say placeholder equals, and it'll exist. Okay. HTML5 has come a long way. All right. I also want to, it's so minor, but that box is too small. You know what? I'm not going to worry about it. You just give it a height and a width, and then you probably have to use a flex on this container to fix it, but I'm not going to go. Let's move on to the button. Okay. So we have a couple things to talk about with this button. We've got to talk about, there's a button, right? And I also have I have button dash green, and I'm also going to add a button dash red. I'm just adding them in now. This is going to have common behaviors. And then this is going to be anything that's specific to the green button and anything specific to the red button. That's all this is, right? Here's the green button right here. Common behaviors, specific behaviors. Common behaviors, specific behaviors. That's the calculate button on the bottom, right? I'm trying to reuse classes as much as possible. That's what I'm getting at here, right? So let's set up our common behaviors. I'm just going to, I'm very keenly aware that we're running short on time, guys. So I'm just going to copy and paste. The width is 100%. We can agree that that's pretty much the case. Font weight it's always going to be bold and uppercase. Border radius, right? We're set up. That's in the wrong one. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay. We can agree that that's always going to be the case. Now all I have to do is make it back, green and red and adjust anything specifics. Okay. I'll get to those in a minute. We'll do that as we get there. Okay. Okay, let's leave those there for now because we know we're going to go to that. Let's move to the footer. The last thing I'm going to do is this picture here. Okay. But we'll move to the footer. So far, so good, guys. I am keenly aware that we are running out of time, guys, and I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to give you guys as many little hints and tips and things as possible, and then we can discuss, or you guys can chat later about it. It's all, these are little, useful little hints to see somebody's process after I've been doing this 25, 30 years now. No, 25 years. I would have been pretty young. 25 years I've been doing this professionally. And it's like to see someone's process. I always found that to be fascinating and useful. Okay, let's move on. Let's just look at the button green and the button red. Let's fix them up now because we're here. All I have to do really is change the background color. And in this case, I know the background color of green. If I look in the file, I can tell you exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be 57 EEAB. Okay, that's the color in the in here in colors.png. And I'm going to give this one a padding all the way around of 1 rem. Let's just see if that worked. That looks, would you guys agree? That's pretty close. And that's pretty good. Let's do the same thing for calculate. Notice everything else is set. All I have to do is change the background color, and I give it a different padding because this, if you notice, is a little smaller padding. That's all it is. So in this case, the background color is, it's actually going to be a number sign FF8480. Okay. And I've changed the padding on this one. It's a little different. 0.5 rem. Now, I'm only having to worry about the top and bottom because the width on all the buttons is set to 100%. Button. So the margin or the padding on the left and right is not a big issue. This padding is only going to apply to the top and bottom, just simply because I could say something like this: 1 rem top and bottom, 0 on the left and right. That's probably a safer bet. And here we go. Notice the calculate's a little smaller. Anything else you guys can see that's different between the buttons? Yeah, the font color, right? And that's easy because I don't have to go in, I don't have to redeclare all this stuff. All I have to do is go in here and say, on the red one, the color is now going to be white. Boop, done. Okay. Now there's a few other things I'd like to do on like a button hover. I'd add a cursor, pointer, and a filter of brightness filter and things like that, but I'm not going to worry about that too much right now. I also would normally change this background color, this color. I'm not going to go down that road, right? You know what? Actually, I will. I'll show you. I'm just gonna add it in. I'll just copy and paste it so you can see what it looks like. That's underneath it. There it is. In the status section, which is this one, right? Already applied. Check your application status here. Anywhere there's a link inside of that div, I want to remove the underline, right? And then for those particular ones, I'm going to give it a color and a hover. And that's it as well. That's all I've done. So that when I cover on it, it's just a little bit of a hint. That's all. Okay. I'm not doing anything crazy. I'm just copy and paste so you can see what it looks like. Let's move on to the footer, because the footer is it's a really important aspect. Once we get this done, guys, we are ready to move on to responsiveness, and we're almost done. Would you guys agree that we're getting really close? Right? I haven't added any media queries. What do I have here? I've got 100 lines of code. It's not a lot. It's just default stuff that is always going to be the same. This stuff I'm writing is never going to change. So why would I don't want to have to redeclare it? I'm just getting the basics done. And as a side bonus, without having to worry about anything, I'm a little bit in the footer here, but it's mobile. It's exactly the same. It's mobile friendly, right? Even if I'm a desktop, it's a little ugly, but it's going to look and feel the same way. That's what we're going for. Mobile first, and then we're going to progressively enhance it. We're going to add some breakpoints and tell it to do things. So let's get into the footer and get that set up. So down here in the footer, we've got our footer color. Okay, it's already set up, and I'm going to add some padding. We know that it's going to be 85% centered, right? We know that because it's got a container in it, and I've already set that up. I don't have to redeclare it because we already went through that, right? When I added the container in, it said, okay, well, just 85% centered. There's no background color or anything. It's purely a movable placeholder. I can change the size of it. That way, all the content in the entire site, if I want it to be a different size, I can just tell it to be a different size, and all content is going to fit neatly and nicely inside of that. That's going to be really useful later on. Okay, so all I need to do now is go in and fix up. And I'm going to add some padding down here. This is purely a cosmetic thing, just make it look good. 1 rem top and bottom, 0 left and right, just like we did before. Probably fine. We'll fix this. We're going to fix this stuff a little bit more, right? In a bit, we have to add the lady in here, the scooter girl, and or the scooter person rather, and the margin at the bottom. All I want to do here is just clean this all up. Let's see what we have for structure, because this is important stuff. This is the stuff we're going to change later. We still have more than a half an hour left, so we should be fine. Okay, we've got a div with a container. We know what that looks like. And that's just everything. It's just giving everything a width and centering. And then we've got 2 little areas inside, right? We've got a div with the calculate, and we've got a div with the social links. Okay, so I can start looking at that and saying, well, how can I make this work for me, right? I can say, I want the footer form to be a grid template area. And then just this area here, I can say, give it 2 rows and a couple of columns. Does that make sense? Right? Because I've broken it up into a nice little section, why don't I say, I'm going to give this I'm going to make it a grid, and then this div, and this div are now, because it's another nice reason to keep them all sectioned off in nice divs, but those 3 divs are now grid child, right? They'll all be grid child. And then I can say, I want this one and this one to be like 1 out of 2 and 2 out of 2, and this one will take up its own space. Let's just see that in action. Let me get rid of this unnecessary thing. So I'm only going to be affecting the footer form. Okay. I'm only affecting the footer form in this case, which is these 3 items. They each have a div. So let's just set that up really quickly. I'm going to say I want to do a display of grid, which isn't going to change anything yet. Okay. The key to this working is that I want the div. If I take the divs away, then this is a child, this is a child, this is a child, this is which could work, but we want the label and the input to go together, even though they're invisible. For accessibility purposes, we want them together. Okay. So all the form elements, we want to be a display of grid. Let's use a grid template of columns. Actually, you know what? We'll start with rows because we know we need them. We know there's going to be 2 rows. So I'm going to say repeat. How many rows do we got? 2 of them. Each one of them is going to be 1 fraction. There's 2 rows. Okay. Each one of them is going to take up like one half. 1 out of 2. Okay. I haven't added, I'm not going to go back and look because we haven't added any of the display areas yet. Let's do the columns now. I don't know why I do columns first. I always do grid template columns. And in this case, it's arbitrary. I'm going to pick one that I know is going to work for me. I'm going to use 3 and 1 FR. And the reason I'm going to choose that is because I want it to go, hours is going to be 1, city is going to take up 2. And then calculate is going to take up 1, 2, 3. That's how it's going to work. It's easy now. And then once we get our next breakpoint, I can change it. All I have to do is change this grid. That's all I got to do. Okay, let's fix it up. Let's just see what this looks like in a second. Before I do my grid, well, let's actually do that now. Grid template areas. We might as well, because we know, no, not none. And I'm going to say, what did I agree on? Hours, city, city. Hours takes up 1 of the 3 columns. City, it takes up the second one and the third one, right? I've got 3 columns set up. And I want the first one to be hours. There it is. And then the next one's going to be city. And it knows that because they're the same ones, it's going to put them together. It's going to look like that. So it won't have a gap in there. Handy dandy. And the next one is going to be simple. The next row, I'm going to call it calc, calc, calc. That's going to be the calculate button. Again, I haven't set anything up, so it's not going to know what to do with it, right? But we're getting places already. Okay, let's go and we'll start by setting that up. I'm going to go down to I'm going to need to adjust this all the time anyway. I'm just going to use the div nth child for now because I just want to get these done. And grid area for the first one is going to be hours. I'm just looking up here. Hours, the first column. The next one will be city and then calc. And you guys can kind of imagine, right? This is the in the bottom. This is the div nth child 1, the hours. This is div with nth child 2, which is city, and this is the nth child. The third div is the calc. I'm going to call it. That's all I'm doing. Hours, city, calc. Look at that, guys. Work smart, not hard, right? Okay. Now I've set these up. I've made my platform. Let's see if it works. Oh, look at that. Beautiful, except for there's no gap. Now I could add margin or padding, but it might cause some issues. There is a way I can do that right within grid. You guys know what that is? I want spacing between these elements, and I don't want it to affect the overall width or anything of the whole thing. Grid gap. Space around is for flex. When we're talking in grid, I can say anywhere where there's, see, these 2 are together, it's going to know. So it's going to kind of go like that. It's going to make them appear together. And then anywhere where there's a space between different items, okay, it's going to say, oh, there's a grid gap. And in my case, I'm just going to make this grid gap equal 1 rem. And when I save it, look at that. Okay, did you guys see how I achieved that fairly simply? It comes down because I'm just using the form as the parent element, and then the divs inside as the children. Right? Doesn't matter what's inside. I could have 10,000 things inside of those, but it's only going to look at the immediate child elements. That's why 1 indentation, 1 line in, 1 nth child 1, nth child 2, nth child 3. And then I can use grid template areas to very easily create that structure. Right? What do you guys think so far? We good? You guys with me? We're almost done, believe it or not. Okay, you guys finding this useful? I hope you guys aren't trying to follow along because you'd be going crazy pulling your hair out right now. I'm going way too quick, kind of on purpose. Okay. Awesome. It's best practices. And the nice thing I would like you guys at some point in the near future, just open a conversation on your Discord or your Facebook or whatever, and just say, what did you guys think of that? How can we apply this? Or what did you mean by that? And have a conversation just informally about these techniques, and being able to bounce ideas off each other, guys. Number one, there's a study group waiting to happen. Number two, it opens ideas as peers. I can talk till my eyes fall out, but you guys can interact in a way that I can't. So I'm going to continue on now. We've got this set up. There's only a couple things left to do, right? I need to add some space. Oh, the footer, sorry, the social links. Okay. I'm not going to go crazy with the social links. Look, it's very simple to handle this. What do you guys think is the easiest way to get those in a row? Flex. This is where I'm using grid for main layout and flex for modules, components. So easy. Okay. I don't even have to say that. There's only one place where it exists. So far, my specificity is really low. So wherever I have social links, I want a display of flex. Ta-da! I just need to arrange them, right? Pretty simple stuff. So let's do that. I'm going to add a little top margin on the top. I just want to have a little more space. Margin top to rem. I just want to add a little more space between, so it's not anywhere where your thumb has to, on a mobile device, has to click. I like to leave lots of space around. There's a law of proximity that we use in user experience for that. Okay, so I also want to put some space, right? So I'm going to say justify content. What kind of justify content do you think is going to be the best one to use for this? This is the space around, space between, space evenly, that one. What do you think is the best one to use to kind of match this? Space around, space between. Someone's going to say space evenly. Yeah, all three of them. Let's just look and see, guys. How about that? Space, let's do space between. Okay, edge to edge. Not exactly what we're looking for. How about space evenly? Oops, sorry, guys. Close, but it's got a lot of extra space. How about space around? I would say that's probably the closest one, right? It adds an equal amount of space on the left and the right of each element. So that way it's nice and centered. Even when we go higher, remember it's constrained, it's stuck inside the container. So it's not ever going to go outside of that. Okay, that one's done. Let's just add one more little piece here. We are well on track here, guys. And if you guys want to, when we're done, I'll stick around afterwards and we can have a conversation. If anybody who wants to or can, that's fine. Okay, so I need to do a couple more things. Namely, I want some space down here in between that. That's going to be really easy, right? This is called the apply box, right? Or the apply. So I just need to add some margin on the bottom of that, fairly straightforward, or something along those lines. Is that apply? How did I do that? Where did I add? Margin auto. I might have done it from the footer. Let me just see if I added it on the footer. Adding rem. Oh, wait. Bear with me, guys. Oh, it's in the main. That's right. I put it in the main. Okay. Yeah. I did that on purpose. Later on, I'm going to have to see, like, I could put it on the welcome right now. And this is the part of auditing ahead of time. Right now, it's this apply now, it's on the bottom. So if I said add a margin on the bottom for apply now, it's going to work. And it's going to work here too. But when I get here, that might cause me issues. What I really want to do is apply it at the bottom of the whole thing, right? Because main is the entire thing. Main is the entire element, right? Pardon me. Everything is wrapped in the main tag. So I don't want to put it just on that one element when I really need to put it on the entire main structure. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a little margin bottom on that. And we need to play in there anyway, because we need to add our scooter person. Okay, I'm going to go find my main tag, which should be here, or the place where it should exist, which in my case is right. I'm going to put it right after those. Okay. Oops, it's just a main. And I want to start out, I'll just say margin bottom to rem, because I know that that works. And where did I put my, did I close it or something? Probably did. I probably definitely did because I'm a crazy person. All right, let's just do it. That's fine. Open with live server. There we go. There, that's good. That'll work. It'll work for now. Let me just move this so we can see again. There. I'd say that'll work for now. I could make it bigger, no problem. You know, if I want to, I can say I don't like that. I want it to go 3 or 4 rem, and then we can just kind of choose what works for us. Okay, I'm just going to say, I'll say 3 rem, and we'll continue on. Now, we want to in the main, we want to add the background image, because it doesn't make any sense to add an image into the into here with the scooter person, and then try and push it behind like in a fake way. Just put it in the background. It's supposed to be a background image. We know that because when we look at it at mobile, we can see it overlaps, or at desktop, we can see it overlaps. So plus it's a BG image, and it's just what makes sense. I don't have to hack it to try and make it work. So I'm going to set that up. I'm going to just in the main, I'm going to add the background image. Okay, so I'm going to copy it just because I don't feel like I'll copy the whole thing, and we'll explain what's happening. This just goes and grabs the background image. No problem. Background repeat. I said no repeat because I don't want to go tile, 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 tile all the way down. If I don't have that, it's just going to repeat it like tiled. It looks terrible. Background position, I want it centered on the X. It always goes X and Y. It almost always will go X axis, Y axis. X runs this way and Y goes top to bottom, right? X is left to right. Top. So left to right, I want to be centered. Easy. And then I want it to be, I said 300 pixels from the top, right? And background size 100%. Let's just see what happens when I save it. There's something up. What did I do wrong here? 1 second, guys. There's my styles. I'm in the main. Yeah, that's good. Is the image in the wrong spot? Oh, I know exactly what the problem is. It's hidden behind my apply box because I didn't add the space. Yeah. So this is one of those things. Like if I say 0 pixels, I'll probably see it at the top. Yeah, it was hidden perfectly behind the apply now. So there we go. That's what happens. That's what I get for trying to go too quickly. Let's just set that up really quickly. I'm going to on the welcome, which is this one here. I'm just going to create a margin on the bottom and push the apply down. Right. Welcome. I'm going to choose an arbitrary number because I've already practiced. I would probably have to tweak and play to figure out what this is, but I wouldn't spend too much time. There it is. Okay. I can adjust the width of it, or the height of it rather, until I really get what I like. And now notice it's also going to give me a little grief as I go, right? I have to add a media query to fix that. That's why we're progressively enhancing. But look at guys. Would you guys agree that I think we're pretty much done? We've got, the thing is that everything that's on the page now, okay, is always going to be on the page. So it doesn't mean in every circumstance that's going to be the case, but in this case, everything that's here is going to be there going forward. And the only situation where I had to add any layout is down here. So when I do my media queries so far, I know that really the only thing I have to change is down there. Santiago.
Quick question. How do you manage the space between the button of calculate and the inputs of hours in CD?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. It got really quiet. How did I manage to stay between?
No, sorry. Like to resize the space between the calculate button in the footers form and the inputs. You know what I mean?
Yep. How do I adjust that size?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so there's I think let me see. We can probably take a look. Let me show you a little trick here while we're at it. So if you're ever confused about those things and you say, well, where is that coming from? Or how do I determine where that space is? This little button here, I just hit the inspector. I'm using Chrome. So that little button there is a lifesaver. I click it, watch what happens. Green is padding, orange is margin. So when I go over any element, this one here, I can see that means there's orange margin in the bottom. I can see all those things. So let's just scroll down. I can see there's some margin padding on there. This one has margin around it. I can see, look at this, it even shows me the whole grid, and I can see that that space is coming from the grid gap of 1 rem. I would have to get specific about it and tell it which where I want the grid, either left and right, top and bottom, whatever. In this case, I'm fine with it just being that way. But it's because of grid, and yeah, and then there's just a little bit of space. I could probably clean that out very well. But yeah, does that make sense? It's because of the grid gap, and like if I was to change this up, it would be a little bit different. I'm going to change it to 0.5 rem, and we should see a little bit of change in it. See, everything's getting a little bit smaller. You can see the change. Did I answer your question?
Yes, but can I specify if I want that gap only between rows and leave like the gap between columns as it was? Let's
see. Grid row gap, right? So grid gap is actually shorthand, but we can use grid row gap, and grid column gap. See, we can do something like that: row gap, column gap. So I could change that specifically. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Robbie, do you have a question?
Yes, just the for the box sizing, was it that in there because that's resize like, because I noticed that the form stretches out as you stretch the window.
So this is a misnomer. It doesn't really have anything to do with the box. I'm just going to get rid of it altogether and watch what happens here. I move that and save it. There's no real big deal. I just always put that in because I just don't like that issue, right? I find for me it causes a problem. Oh, I forgot to fix that. But for me, it's just I want to make sure that I never have that issue.
Oh, okay.
You'll also notice that it did fix my grid gap because I had these all set to be 100%, and now I don't have to worry about it. So 100% plus their grid gap. See, it pushed it back over. When I comment the border box out, notice it goes over the amount of space that's available.
Okay.
So by doing that, it told me to use the specified width and ignore any issues with paddings and grid gaps.
But okay, so it has nothing to do with as you stretch the window.
Nope.
That's what I mean.
No, that has nothing to do with that.
Okay, thank you.
Miriam.
Yes, I just had a question for the footer form. Is there any particular reason why we didn't put the icons in the grid too, like having 3 rows instead of just separating both?
I did that. That's a great question. I could have done that, and then I could have but it would have been really hard to get to this, because I would have had to, and this is centered inside of here and everything. It would have been a lot harder. It's okay when I'm talking about these guys here, because then everything's in a nice column. It's all neat and easy. But as soon as I have to separate them, then I'd have to make this a huge column and separate the amount, leave a bunch of blank space in the middle, and then vertically center that using, like, do you see what I mean by that?
Yes.
Become problematic. By simply separating it in the HTML, they are very clearly separate entities. And then I could just use, and I will use, if I wanted to, flex with space between, right? Because they're right up against the edge, and just going to push them aside, these 2 elements. So I could do that, or a grid, or whatever I wanted to do.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And again, there's 100 ways to do anything. Everyone's going to have their own preferred method. Okay, I'm going to move forward because we're almost done here, and we're running short. We're shortly running out of time. I know, I'm aware you guys have time issues as well. So I'm going to leave this as is. You guys get the point, and I'm going to move on to progressive enhancement. Okay, the idea here is that it's done. Okay, it doesn't look ideal here. I'd have to, right? I could put a shim in here if I wanted to. I'll add it at the very end. I'll copy and paste it in and show you how I fixed that. But I'm going to use my first breakpoint. I'm going to choose 700 pixels, right? So by choosing 700 pixels, I just got to go in here. I'm going to say at media minimum width. So once everything's fine, everything's going to be exactly the same. Once we hit a minimum width of 700 pixels, we're going to add or overwrite whatever I put in here. Notice nothing has changed. Even when I get to 700 pixels, nothing has changed. That's the beautiful thing about mobile first. Now I'm going to start slowly changing. I never ever want content to touch the edges. So in this case, I'm not going to say container with the 700 pixels, but remember we talked about everything being in a container. We now know that this is going to, well, let's set it up. Let's show you container. And I want to say the container is going to be a width 700 pixels. Okay, it's already automatic. It's already centered. I've already declared margin auto, so I don't have to redeclare it. I only have to overwrite the width value. That's all I have to do. And that's what I'm going to do. Now watch when I save it. When I go to 700, right? The problem is I don't like it right up against the side, and that's kind of an issue. So I'm just going to change this arbitrarily. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. It's already going to be centered. And that'll give us this effect. It stretches, and then once we hit tablet, it locks. Why is that important? Because mobile is always just going to be this anyway. So I'm not really worried about it. But when I get to a tablet, I want to have control. So when I open up XD or Photoshop and make my design, I'm going to say create new artboard 650 pixels. That means I know exactly what the layout is supposed to be and how it's supposed to fit. And so this allows me to tailor it to fit exactly that. And look, I can get it pixel perfect. Plus it's centered, it's neat. By the way, I haven't done anything. I just changed the width. The only thing I've done to this entire layout is change the width. And now the only other thing I have to do is fix this down here, right? And maybe this image. There's nothing else to change. I could be done this whole layout in seconds now. Very simple, right? Okay, let's continue working with that. And I never want the content to touch the edges, so I just made the width of the container to be a little bigger than the breakpoint. That way, when I get to that breakpoint, it locks in. It's not going to touch the edges like it would at 700, which I think you would all agree with me. It looks yucky, right? Right against the edge like that. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I would rather give a little space so it looks, it's got room to breathe. It doesn't look crowded. That's the big thing. Okay. If someone happens to have a device that's exactly 650 pixels. All right. I'm going to tackle this first because I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So that's our container. Let's go to the main. That's where we have our background image, right? That's this one right here. By the way, we are on our tablet now, so I can do that. I don't need this at all, so I can save the space. Pardon me. All right. Stay right there. Stay there. All right. Now I want to adjust the main. That's this little section, right? We went from there to there. It's going to be roughly the same, but because the width is bigger, I have to lock it in place now. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to lock that right in place. I'm going to give it a much more static number. I'm going to say the background position, again, is still center. I already told it to have the image there. It's still there. I don't have to redeclare that. I'm going to say center, and I'm going to drop the number to 240 pixels. Okay. I might change that, right? I could, probably will. Change it right now. Let's see, 200 pixels, 100 pixels. Hold on a second. Why isn't this jiving? What is going on? Oh, there we go, because I was in the wrong breakpoint because I'm a crazy person. Okay, 200 pixels. Yep, and then also the size is a little off too, right? So we'll fix that. I'm just going to make it background size. In this case, I'm going to say 65%. There we go. I'd say that's pretty good. I could put a shim to fix this, and I will, but for now, there we go. Pretty close, right? I could adjust all of this stuff. I could make it just pixel perfect. You guys get the idea, right? Just playing around. Okay. You guys understand that you can do that, right? You can go in and just change what you want to. I'm just showing you the best practices at this point. There is a shim in between here that I would add, and I will add at some point before we're done. Now let's get to the footer. The only other difference we have here is that this calculate button needs to go beside. I've already declared all of the grid areas. I've already declared the grid and the grid gap and everything. So really the only thing I have to do here is remove the row. I tell it none, and then change this up. I want to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've just chosen that, right? You can get us, I can put 12 in there, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, however deep you want to get with it. I don't need to get that deep with it. I'm only going to override the values that I need to override. Grid gap's not going to change. Display grid is not going to change. These three things are going to change, right? Change the amount of columns to 5 and 1 FR because I chose 1, 2, 1, 2. No, what did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, and 2. So that adds 5. I'm going to tell the rows, I'm going to say none, and then I have 5 of 5 things to work with in here, right? So let's set that up. Matter of fact, let's just do this. Okay, here's what we already have in the footer form. Okay, do you guys see what I mean by that? When I talk with, I only have to change certain things because we're progressively enhancing. We're just adding on to or enhancing the things to make it work for our breakpoint. Everything's already set. I made my defaults. So now I can just make little tweaks. In this case, I'm going to go 1, and I want this to be 2 now, and this to be 2. So let's start by we don't want any rows. So I'm going to override the rows that I created already by just saying none. Okay, now it's already messed up because I have it here, right? So I'll fix that in a minute. And I want to have five of these as well. And then I just have to create my new structure. Right? We have no rows, just we have one row. Okay, and I could even just tell it to be like 1 or 1 FR. Probably a better bet, right? Okay, and then I can go in here and just tell it to, you know, it's getting weird. I'm just going to say none for now, and I'm going to make this 5, and then I can do what I was supposed to be doing here in the first place, which is hours, city, calc. When I count them up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's my 5 rows. I've already declared which area is which div. So now it knows where to put them. Let's see if it worked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with a grid gap we've already set. That's it. That's my whole media query to change that whole thing. That's everything changed. Right? Here's my default media query. I'm going to add a shim for this later. It's making me crazy. Okay. You guys see how that worked? I only had to override the values that were needed to be overridden. Any questions? We're going to do the last one here now. I don't know if it's anything wrong with the Mac, but the input of my footer doesn't change. If you're following along, it's probably because we didn't get something, like something's not matching. You missed a code somewhere. But the idea here is sound, right? When we were able, go through and fix it up, it's working, right? Okay. Okay, so let's continue on. So I'm going to continue on to the final media query, and I'm going to choose 1280 pixels. So that's just where I'm going to pick. I'm going to say at media, and the min width for this one is going to be 1280 pixels. It's an arbitrary number that I've just chosen. Okay, and so that means when I do this, it means I definitely want to. I always want to make sure I have the container to change width as well, right? Every time I have that, I have to change my container width. So in this case, I'm going to do the same as I did before, which is 50 pixels less than what I have. It's already centered. So right away, watch what happens when I grow to that size. There. Again, I'll have to change this, but I can see my breakpoints in action. Fluid up to my set breakpoint, up again to my set breakpoint. Okay. Let's continue on. So I'm going to adjust the main again. I really want to fix that background. Okay. This background. Actually, no, I don't. I want to. These have to be moved. Okay, so that's the big thing. So let's go right to the grid thing, right? So we need to actually set up the main first. So I'm going to say inside the main, we're going to set this up with a display of grid. I'm going to say display of grid. Okay, we all remember now that main is this entire thing. Both the welcome and apply section are going to have a grid, so they can go left to right. Okay, that's all I'm doing here on the main. So yeah, no problem. I can do that. And perfect. So now I need some, I'm going to say grid template columns. I don't have anything in here yet. I need 3 of them, right? I need welcome, an empty space for the background image, and apply now. Okay, so that's easy. Repeat. 3 times 1FR. Or I could just go, if I really wanted to, I could just say 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. Same thing. All right, it doesn't like that. I don't know why. Display, template, columns. Oh, because right there, display, grid, template, columns. There we go. I do that sometimes. Okay, and I don't have to worry about rows. It's only 1 row, so that's good enough. Look at this. It's already starting to try and conform. That's great. But I need to be able to create that empty dot in the middle, so I'll have to fix that up. In this case, let's build that. Do you guys remember how to leave an empty space in the grid template areas? Like if I was to say, I know that I have to go in and create these things. So I'll do it right now. The welcome box, yeah, you guys got it, the dot. The welcome one, I'm going to give it a grid area. Remember, welcome, guys, is this part here. Want to be your own boss? Start today. This is the welcome, and this is the apply. Okay, so welcome is going to be. I'm going to call anything is the grid area for this one is welcome, right? And apply. Here, I'll just put it in its own the way we're used to. And apply is going to be grid area of apply. Sorry, I'm going to call it apply. If I can ever get my, there we go. Okay. So all I've done here is I said anything with a div of apply is going to have, I'm going to use the word apply. Anything with a div of welcome is I'm going to use the word welcome. I have 3 columns. So the first one's going to go welcome. And then I create an empty space in the middle column by using a dot. And then I want the div of apply to be there, the div of welcome to be there, and that's going to be an empty box. I have some tweaking to do, but and the footer needs to get done. Do you guys look at this? This is so far, I'm so close, and that's all I have for code. I don't have to rewrite anything because it's already done. I can make little tweaks, progressively enhancing it to make it slowly better as I move forward. Okay, I know we're pretty much done out of time now, but you see the picture. I'm going to kind of quickly move forward and get some extra stuff done. On the welcome, sorry, on the main, I'm just going to change the background image and size a little bit just to make it. Sorry, let's do this in some sort of order. This has all this extra space, right? And that extra space is kind of a pain. I want to get rid of that. On the welcome itself, I had added a bunch of, between the different breakpoints, I added a bunch of space on the bottom for the mobile size. I just need to get rid of that for here. I don't need it anymore because I shifted it over to the right. So if I inspect, but you guys are learning, right? Don't beat yourself up about it. You're learning. That's the fact that you're here to figure out the techniques. You guys should really be patting yourself on the back. There is 30 people in here. That's less than one section worth of people. So you guys, I always know the people that are interested in actually learning. Take a look around, see who's not here, right? Or that's not fair. Some people couldn't make it for other reasons too, right? But I mean, really a lot of it is. Anyway, let's just go through. Now look, when I use this inspector tool, if I hover over, look at, there it is. I can see all that yellow is margin, right? I added that margin. It even tells me over here where I can see margin bottom. I can turn it on and off temporarily. When I reset the page, it'll be fine, right? And I know it's on line 8 of my CSS. So I can go over here and I know exactly it's margin bottom. So I can just override that on the welcome, margin bottom of 0. Okay. So I'll just need to go over here and do that. Welcome, margin bottom at this breakpoint now becomes 0. That fixes that. I just need to fix up my person in the middle, adjust my footer, and I'm done. Okay, so the person in the middle, that's on the main. That's a background size thing. Because it's really, I think you agree that's really big. Maybe it's not. This is, it's all individual. I'm going to change it to 45%. Yeah, that looks a little better. And then, oops. And then also I want to adjust the position. Background position, again, we have to say center in here, but I'm going to change from the top. I want it to be 60 pixels. Holy moly, guys. And because I have a set width and not a percentage-based width, it fits exactly where I need it to fit, right? Okay, let's fix the footer up, and then we can kind of maybe open it up for discussion, or we can add, I can throw you one or two more tweaks, and then we'll go from there. So the last thing I want to do is fix the footer up. Now, the container is already set. We're good. It's going to always be the same width in the footer or in the main body area. So I'm going to go down, and but I do want to use the container in the footer, right? So I've got this footer with a container that wraps everything. This is one of the reasons I have a div with a calculate, which is this little box over here, and a div with social links. They're both, I can say, make this container to be a flex or a grid, right? And then I can adjust, it'll just affect that child and that child, which is the whole calculate box and the whole social media box. Let's just see. I'm going to try a couple of different techniques. I'm not sure which one's going to work. They should both work. So I want the container that's in the footer, only the container that's in the footer. I want to give it a display. Let's just see what happens when I give it a display of flex. Well, we're already on the right track. And I'm gonna just try running with that for now. Now, you know what? I'm gonna stick with my grid. I like that for larger components like that. It makes more sense. I can easily control it. I also want to show you guys the idea of having more space, and we can do this pretty comfortably if we want to. Grid template columns. I'm going to use an 8-column grid. Why? Because it gives me extra to work with. Okay. When I do that, it's going to give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can, just the way I used a dot for a spacer in the middle, I can put dot, dot, dot and create as many or as little spaces as I need to, as long as I have in the areas I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 worth of columns being used. Does that make sense? So I'm going to use 8 because I want to be able to have finite control. Again, I could use flex and use flex basis, and I like this method. It's how I'm used to. You guys will understand why when I get towards the end of the course and we talk about Bootstrap. But let's just do this. Grid template areas, not none. And I'm gonna do this. Let's leave it for now. Let's set up we have the calculate and the social links that we need to add in here. Calculate. Okay, that's going to be this box. I need to give it a grid area name so I can apply it to the grid template areas, and same thing with that one. So calculate is going to have a grid area. I'm going to call it sorry, not calculate. Yeah, I'm going to call it earn, just because I like to give it a different name than what we have in other sections. Earn. Come on, Rob. Earn. There we go. 2 hours with explanation. Yeah, but I've been doing this for 25 years, guys. Don't beat yourself up. You guys are doing a super, super great job. And you're absorbing and asking the right question, right? Okay. I can't do it. There we go. All right. And this one has a grid area name of, call it social. Yeah. Now, all I have to do is I have 8 to work from in here. See, it's overlapping. I have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This represents all the columned space, all the columns that I have inside of here. It represents everything. Okay. Break this up into 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever. And that represents this. So if I look at the layout that I have here, I can start designing accordingly. I would say maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. Let's just see what it looks like. I'm guessing. I'm making it sound like I'm guessing, but I have it beside me and I know it works. But so the earn, which is this whole, I know this is hard to see. This whole section over here is the earn section, and this is the social section. So earn probably takes up a little more. Actually, earn and the gap take up about the same amount of space. 3, 3, that's 6, and then 2, 7, 8. Okay, that's just how I would do it. So the earn is the calculate part. Then we have 3 empty ones, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 for the social. You guys think it's going to work? Wrong one again. How anticlimactic. Okay. Look at that as 3 plus 3 in the gap, and then 2 left over at the end. 3, 3 in the gap, 2 left over at the end. That equals 8 columns. That's why I used 8. I can be as finite as I want to. I could probably have broken it down a little less or whatever, right? Now, there's 2 things that are going to bug me to no end. This is not centered. It's not centered vertically. What's a great way to get it centered vertically, up and down? What do you guys think? If I was going to vertically center the social link, what's the easiest way to vertically center something? Align items. I could do that. I could go in and I could say I want the nth child to whatever, but I already have something here set up, right? I could do that. Yeah. I just want to show. I'm going to show you guys a technique here. Just because this is a grid child, right? Just because it's a child of a grid doesn't mean that I can't give it its own property, right? I could do that if I wanted to. I could give it its own property. And once I make it a flex grid, everything's already in a row, but I can use this and I can say, I want to align the items inside of here to the center. Remember, a line goes top to bottom. When I save that, there is a bit of a margin top here. Remember at the smallest setting, we added a little bit of extra space because I wanted to separate from the button. So I just need to remove that. I'll just say, margin top 0, centers it a little bit better, or I could adjust it however. There's some space on the side because we used space around. So I could just say, okay, well, right, I'm just overriding values that I've chosen already and say space between, that way it goes right up against the edge. Nope. You guys get the idea, right? That's it. This has to be, there's a fix. I want to fix that. I'll show you that, and that's the next thing I'll do. But then that's it. Do you see how everything is set up? Let's just do this, make it real small. I know it's hard to see, but all this stuff from the very top and in the beginning, all the way down, it has to be there anyway, because it's all just setup. It's all background colors and fonts and H1s and background. Like this one's always going to be there. And then the other 2 breakpoints makes up that. Just this little section at the bottom. That's all the rest of the code, because everything's already set. All I had to do was change minor things because I progressively enhanced it. And this is not pixel perfect, but with a little bit of work, if I knew exactly how many pixels, I could, the structure is here. I could say, well, it's not 60, it's 63 or something, right? But that's why we're doing this. You guys can learn. Now, I want to show you something that's driving me crazy because I'm one of those guys. Oops, I don't need that. Nope. Don't need you. Make you bigger again so we can follow along. This makes me crazy. See how it pushes underneath. What the problem is that I need a shim. They call it a shim. It's just a little something that's going to fit in between just to make it work, right? There's one little piece of time when the text wraps this whoops. Right, the text wraps to a new line, and that causes it to jump up, and I want to fix that just at that one breakpoint, and I can do that. That's one of the few exceptions to the rule for when I would want to use a max, width, or a range, but I don't even have to. It only occurs for me at a certain size, right? When it wraps. Let's just see when it is. This is just troubleshooting. Okay. It only really occurs to me when that line wraps. When does it wrap? 556 pixels. Right? We can see that up here. 556 pixels. So I can just make a quick little shim. And by a shim, I'm just going to go, it have to be in order. So it's at 556. It's lower than 700. Okay, I can see these aren't indented, so I know that they're not in a media query because indentation counts, guys. Formatting. So at media, when I hit the minimum width of 556 pixels, I want something to happen. What do I want to happen? I just want to fix this issue. The only thing I have to do is make a quick adjustment to the main. The background size is going to change to 80%, a little bit smaller. And the background position, I want to move it up just a little bit. Now you would have to do a little bit of looking back and forth or just guesswork, right? We still want to be centered, but I could say like, was 300 pixels what I want? No, probably not. How about 200 pixels? No, how about 250 pixels? Now look, I have this, it's a nice little shim I created, just one little fix with a quick little media query. As I get a little bit bigger, the wheels touch the bottom. It looks pretty good. And then when the wheels touch the, oh, and I could probably fix that too, right? But now I'm in tablet mode. So I'm never at a broken look, just a quick little fix. That's the difference between an 18 and a 20 and a 20 and a 20. Little fixes. And I would still need to fix that. This is a 19 because of that. I would just need to fix that little piece up too. That's because of this breakpoint. But that's the whole thing, guys. Right? What do you guys think? I know we went a little over. I apologize. Thanks for being here, guys, and coming. I'm so jazzed that you guys came to take part in this. I can't even begin to tell you what a great start to my weekend that was, that I get to be just a total nerd with you guys. Questions? What do you guys think? Issues, comments, concerns? Yeah, Miriam.
I do have a question.
Sure, what's up?
What if the image was not as a background image? Or like, let's say if it was a text that needed to be there. If we do the grid, how can we make it work so it can fit still with the area?
So if
grid
this
area?
background scooter
Was
if
not
we
a background. Yeah.
if it wasn't a background, then it wouldn't be a big deal because I still have the space, right? The nice thing about this design at this big one is that I have a space. So I would just do that, and I would probably have to give it like a see what I mean? I already have the space. The space is there. There's 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. It wouldn't be overlapping or anything. It would be its own image. Do you see what I mean by that?
Yes, I do. So let's say if we tried to do that and it didn't work, what could be the reasons? Is it maybe because we don't have a container? It's because there are there is no padding or margins or anything, but it's just like everything gets squeezed. So what could be the reason if I wanted to inspect and look for something wrong?
Okay, well, let's talk. Inspect is a great way to put it. Let's use the inspector tool and look.
Mhm.
So again, I'm going to right click and inspect. Make this, I don't know if it's going to fit. There we go. This tool is awesome. Okay, this little one here. This is a responsive one. I hate it. It makes things really difficult. It doesn't always look the way you want, and I don't ever use it. But with this here, I click on this. Now, if I can see as I click it, look at it says there's a grid. Okay, if I click on that, it shows me the grid. It shows me that this is the welcome. It shows me the grid, the track numbers, shows you everything. I can go over here to layout in the bottom. I can tell it to show me the sizes or the names of them or extend the lines. I can tell it, I want to see the container in the other one too, all of the different ones. So I can now see all the layouts in my website. So with this, I can actually look and I can say, I can clearly see where the grid is. And if something is crunched up, I will know here's 1 FR, which equals 410 pixels in this case, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it would allow me to adjust, for example, the image size or something to get everything fit in those boxes.
In this case, if the image if this was a regular image and it wasn't working, the simple solution to that would be, I want the image that has a class of scooter to have a max width of 100%. Come on, Rob, 100% and a height of auto. And then what that'll do is that'll force this image, which I'm assuming is going to be in your HTML and has a class of scooter. I mean, really, to be honest with you, I would just say all images, right? But it would force that image to fit maximum width. So it'll go from the left-hand side of the edge over here all the way into there, and the height will automatically constrain. That'll force it into that image. The only way it will not work is if somewhere after you've declared this, you override that. Remember, it reads top to bottom by saying, I want the image, specifically that one, to have a width of 500 or 360 pixels, in which case it'll override it because it comes after.
Yeah, like if in a media query before that, or like
Yeah.
in the mobile view. Okay.
Big time. And also the specificity, right? What's the specificity for this one?
Mm-hmm.
It's 0001.
One, yeah,
But this one is always going to be better because
21, right?
whoops, yeah. 0011.
Oh, no, 1, 11,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is a high, it could be 0019. It wouldn't make a difference because as long as there's one more number to the left, it'll always take precedence, right? So if there was 99, as soon as you get a 1 there, this one will be higher. But anyway, yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
okay.
the thing. So you have to keep there's a few things to keep in mind, right? And I know it's a lot, right? I know it is for sure, but over time, if you want to make a career of this, or it becomes kind of second nature. But yeah, that's what would happen. It's about remembering those things and keeping it deliberately. I kept my specificity really low. If you look, I'm using as low as I possibly can all the way through this. And then not only that, but also being very minimal, right? Reusing container because I can. Why would I rewrite it? Reusing container. Like I'll use footer form rather than putting a class on the form because 0002 is always going to be better than 0010 or whatever. Just being very specific, very minimal. And then it makes keeping track of it easy. Look at this. How many lines of code did I use? 200 exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that comes from a lot of experience, but it also comes from just best practices, which is what I really wanted to talk about today was
Yeah.
mobile first. And let me show you guys one other thing too, while we're talking quickly about it. Guys, so many times people missed out on this, like at least 40%, maybe closer to 50% of the class did not validate their code. Number one, that's 10% of your grade that you just lost. And number two, if I just dump that, just copy and paste it in, okay, it's going to tell me if I had a mistake. No errors found. But watch, in some cases, it was something like you said, margin. So many people had something like this, a simple mistake. Simple mistake. And they didn't check it and they submitted, did not validate, you lost 10%. And if you would have just done it, margin top, none is not a value you can use. That's what it's telling you. You go back and you go, oh, it needs a 0 pixels. And then then you would say, okay, does this work? You go back. Like it just told you very simply, right? I'm not directing this to anybody. And then it validates, you get 10% of your mark, 10%. So that's a total bummer when it's a spelling mistake. You said earn by, you know what I mean? Like, or, you forgot a bracket and then I would give you this one here. Missing a bracket, you'll get this one, parse error on the very end of your line. If there's a parse error down at the bottom, it means that parsing means it wasn't able to properly output. It's because you missed a bracket. So those things, and you can always call me or email me and say, I don't know what's going on. But guys, validate that. Is that worth 10% to you? And you can do it as you go, just so you know, like as you're coding every so often, just highlight, copy, go into the direct import, or you can, if it's already online, or if you just want to take your whole CSS file, lots of options, put it in there, check it, good to go, continue on. Best practices. Miriam, sorry, I went off the track on that. Did that answer your question?
No, it did actually. And which brings me to when you mentioned best practices. So one thing that I noticed is just put in every section in a container. So that would be best practice to like get things set. So we don't have to use like margins and paddings like every time, because I think that makes a lot of lines.
Absolutely. I see a couple of great question in the HTML in the chat. So I'll answer that in a second. But yeah, this to me makes sense. Some people will say, well, that's using too much. Why would you use all that extra stuff? But it just makes sense. Plus, when I'm looking at the code, it's semantic, right? I can see what's going on. It's easy to look at. My label and my input are in their own little containers inside the form. I made it so easy. I could take this whole form and I could make a whole grid out of it. Whereas it would be hard to do when I have two elements that I'm trying to move together with grid, right? By putting it inside an element, inside of a container, it's like putting two stones in a bucket. It's easier to move. If I have 3 stones, for example, and I have to have 3 hands, but if I put them in a bucket, I only need 1. I can easily move things around. So make it easy on yourself. You're creating the HTML, you're creating the structure. So go ahead and give yourself what you need, right? Notice I use class very rarely. By having that form div label, I was able to get where footer, label. I could, with just 0002, I could get very specifically to say all these labels disappearing. So, okay, here's another question. What's the difference between using section and div in HTML? That's a really great question. This is a responsive web design 1 question. There's so much to learn when you're in responsive web 1, when you're coming in. So much to learn. I mean, you could almost take the exact same material twice just to reinforce it. I get that. So div, back in the olden days, the Wild West of Renaissance period of web design, way back in the day, there was, when we first started having structure, like this type of structure, we actually used tables for a long time, which I don't even want to show you how terrible that looks, but they introduced div, a division, right? It's a division that we can use to hold things into. We can hold things, and that's great. But then as time went on, people said, well, like, for example, if you look at this right now, just from the top down, okay, I'm just kind of getting off track. You can tell what's going on, right? I have a div with a class of container. They're probably very soon going to have a semantic one called container. You know this is a header. You know this is the main. You know this is a section because it's semantically correct. By looking at it, if I wanted to have a navigation in here, I would say I would put a nav and I would put a UL with a list, right? Like, I mean, because it's a list of navigation items or whatever I would do. It's about being semantic in the choices you make. But what's the difference between them? Nothing. The name. The name is the only difference between main, sorry, not the only difference. Main, section, header, div, article, aside, footer, all of those structural things, they're just a div with a name that you can look in the HTML and use. It gives meaning and value to the HTML without having to have any styles to look at. Does that make sense? And it's very important because you see now, in here, how many times did I look at footer, form? If I would have had to have said div form or div with a class of footer, right? I mean, the specificity goes down, which increases the opportunity for me to make mistakes because now I have to be really specific, and maybe I said foot by accident, or right. In this case, footer, form, div, and child. Or if we keep going back, I could say, the label or the input with the type of text is very specific. Same thing, header. I could say I want the image inside the header. So much easier. But the actual difference is negligible. There's really no difference. It's just it's a block level element, which is a 100% width invisible container. That's all it is. Absolutely. It's absolutely useful for people with disabilities using the web. That's a really great point. With this, with screen readers, a div is just a div, right? But a screen reader looks and says, oh, look, there's a nav element. This is the navigation. Because a screen reader is reading a website to somebody, but doesn't care or know what this is unless I specifically create an accessible style sheet. It's not looking, it doesn't care what width is when it's just reading. Like if you close your eyes and think about the web, it's really just text. It's content. That's why content is always king. And so how does it know div class of nav versus div class of body or main? It knows nav, this contains navigation material, and it knows, oh, main, this is probably the most important content. And for that reason, also one of the reasons I said it's almost never a difference between them, because main will actually make your text a little bit bigger sometimes. Okay, and normalize fixes that, but it does have that as an issue. Yeah, so there's no big difference, but it's best practices to use them because semantics. If you go to the IMDAC, the GitHub, and you look at responsive web design, please tell me it's in here. Semantics, accessibility, semantics, semantic HTML, semantics. Look at that. It's huge. And then on top of that, you can add ORIA roles, and there's all kinds of things you can do to increase and improve accessibility. And when I got my first job in Ottawa, outside of my small town I'm from, I came here. My first job was updating Government of Canada websites to make them accessible. There's so much work for web accessibility specialists because it's huge right now. That was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry. Hopefully that answered it for you. Any other questions, guys? Anything at all? Was this useful? Were you guys able to look at this and see Like, do you think this will be useful for you going forward?
Yes.
Yeah, just the process, right? It's not about the code. Like, yeah, I used H2 and I added a little bit of color in the back. It's about the process and the thinking pattern of how it went into it. The first thing you have to do is look at the layouts and say, what's going where? Grid's awesome. Yeah, grid flex is good for little components. I use it to lay this out. As soon as I said flex, it went in a row. Perfect. But the main layout is done in grid, and look how easy it is to adjust it as you go forward. All I have to do is just change the grid template. Yeah, grid flex combo. That's where it's at, guys. It's amazing. Now, later on, you guys are going to learn Bootstrap, and that's going to change. You guys are going to be like, why didn't we learn that first? But walk before you run. This is the way to do it. If you really want to impress a boss coming into this career, or if you want to make a career of this and you really want to impress I don't like the term boss, but you want to impress a hiring manager or a creative director, this is what they're going to look at and say, this person knows what they're doing. That and little things like, just, you're going to see some stuff later that'll help out, like variables, CSS variables and stuff. But yeah, that's it. Okay. Any other questions about that, guys? Bootstrap's pretty interesting. Yeah. I don't want to show you right now. Should we use normalize from now on? That's a great question. You use whatever works for you best, right? Use whatever works for you best. Let's see. Normalize versus reset. There we go. There's all kinds of things to read, and it'll explain the difference. Find out which one works for you. I like normalize because, as we saw, if I didn't have to go in and add things to every single element to make this work. Let's see what happens when I remove normalize in here, or I swapped it with a reset, right? Reset CDN. Sure. Let's just swap it out and see. So we know the Dash landing page looks like that with reset or with normalize. Now let's just see when I put reset into it. I'm going to do this. There we go. Oh my goodness. All right, here it is. So when I swap that and I put in reset instead, let's see what happens. Okay, watch it. Here it goes. Let's see. It removes all the bottom margins and the bolds. I would have had to told it to be bold. I would have had to have told it to be like it. I'm not going to say it makes things more difficult. When you're learning, it's a great tool because it forces you to think about every single element as a piece of the whole. You guys heard about like Gestalt design theory when you're in your UX class and your design foundations and things like that, design thinking. It's where you look at little pieces as a part of the whole. And reset forces you to do that. But now that you know how to do that, I don't need to go and add all that stuff back, right? Like I don't need that in my life. I know that I know how to do it. So with normalize, I can take advantage of the fact that all those things I'm expecting to see, like margins underneath a paragraph, or certain colors or things like that, like I know to expect those. Yeah. Normalize for me is where it's at. And here's what normalize does, guys, is every browser is very similar, right? But if you want them to be perfect, what you have to do is tell them to be perfect. You have to go and say, I want you to look a certain way. I want you to have all fonts are going to start at 17 pixels, so that if, I don't know, Opera decides that it wants to be the weird one and be 16 pixels, now everything could be a little off in that one browser. This one specifically says all paragraphs are 17 pixels. So all the browsers have to follow that rule, and it levels the playing field. Let's see what it looks like. I feel like I'm going down. If you want to leave, or if I'm boring, you can take off. I could literally just sit here and do this all night long. Okay, normalize starts out largely an awful lot like reset, right? Remove all the margins, but then it resets. It brings everything back, and it says H1 will always be 2M with a certain set margin, right? HRs, the horizontal rule, will use a content box sizing with a 0 height and an overflow visible, and any relevant rules, of course, that are important, so on and so forth. It sets everything up very specifically, right? All images will have a border style of none. I hate that. That's actually really bad because it's an accessibility issue, but it looks nicer, right? It sets everything so that instead of just saying everything's 0, it's now all browsers are following the same set of rules. So they're all going to look the same. It's pretty useful. So now this will look the same on every browser because because Normalize does that for me. All right. Is there any other questions, guys? You have any comments, or let's see, do you have any suggestions for us, the prototype assignment in general? Oh, that's a great question. Do I have any? So here's the thing about the prototype is you've already made the mock-up, right? So remember, guys, here's just some best practices for that. There's some ways to look at it. You guys, you are the world's foremost expert on your mock-up. Nobody in the world knows it better than you do because you designed it. So you could, I don't want to say lie to me or whatever. I mean, you could make it do anything you want to because you're the designer. You made it. You're the one who created it. So I don't know. I'm not in your head. I don't know what you want in that. So when you come into it, do it with authority, right? Go in and say, okay, I know that this structure should be over here. Like the way I broke this down when I first came in, right? And I started it with an empty HTML file, right? And I said, okay, well, I know that I need to have a container to wrap this stuff. Like you already kind of have an idea of how that all goes together because you guys created it. So when you go into it, don't do the same kind of process, right? You guys know the stuff. So go in with some authority and be, do a lot of, critical thinking about it and make sure that you're thinking in a big way about it. That's a big thing I can tell you. And then lots of good comments, guys. Did you guys read I don't think I sent it to everyone. I want to show you guys, because some of you guys here are from section 1. So I'm going to show you guys, or read to you the note that I sent to section 2, but not section 1, about commenting. I use comments as a way to tell if my students understand the code they're using. It means you're thinking critically about what code is appropriate to use and how it will affect things overall. It helps me to grade you appropriately. It's also going to help you guys as students because using reflective practice to consider what code to use rather than just throwing bits of code at it, hoping it fixes it, is going to make you a better coder in the long run. It's actually proven. It's called reflective practice. And it's a skill that employers want, right? And I know this for a fact, I've been told that. Okay, so that should help understand a little more about comments. Use them, I don't need to know the color change, but good commenting is going to help me and it's going to help you. So make sure you're doing that. Let's see, can I change some stuff from the prototype mockup? Yeah, I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole with talking about other assignments today because it is 5:30 on Saturday. I was supposed to pick up my Jeep a half an hour ago from I'll do that tomorrow, I guess. But you can change some stuff for sure. Yeah, you can definitely change some stuff, but keep the look and feel the same, right? And make sure that you don't go too far down the rabbit hole. When you show me the mock-up, I need to be able to look and say, yes, they can design what they've created. That's what the point is, right? So you can make some little changes, but don't go crazy. Is it absolutely necessary to use XD for the mockup? I use Figma to create it, design foundations. Should I move over to XD? No, you can send whatever. Send me a picture, whatever, that's fine. I'm going to tell you this, though. It's really easy for me to tell if you created the HTML first and then went and made the mockup. So, it's your call. But my job is literally to analyze code and break it down. So, I would say, send me what you, or do it in whatever makes you comfortable and send me what you have, as long as the layout, as long as the mockup was done first, right? Yeah. Figma, whatever. Anytime. Hey, listen, guys, I'll do this anytime. We can, Friday is good for me, or, maybe another day, or I can find a day that works better for everyone. If you guys need a refresher on something, or you want to go over an assignment, or if somebody found a cool website, want to talk, like whatever. Okay, we can do that. But I highly encourage you guys to set up some talks with each other, go over things and say, okay, well, we're done the assignment now. Let's break it down. If you can get a study group, break down, and then you can discuss back and forth why and best practices. That's always the best way to do it. It's hard for me to do this every single week, but there's, I could find different times too, right? And I know there's a couple of students who just couldn't make it at this time. So I'm trying to be inclusive. but I will do this anytime, guys. Or if you need a one-on-one for something, that's fine. I can't go back over tons of material, like redo a whole class, but this is a very useful, practical example of how I would attack a website. And I feel like a lot of people here are going to be able to benefit from that going forward. Yeah. Comments, thoughts, questions, concerns?
Well, I can just say that it helped clarify a lot on our way of going about things. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just saying we for everyone, but because I feel like we were overwhelmed kind of like with the tools, and we forgot that it's actually just tools and we should be in control and just take it one step at a time and use those tools to help us get to where we want to be with the code and how it's supposed to look. And it was the other way around. So I feel like really thank you, because this is a great opportunity and we do appreciate that you took the time and did that with us, because I feel like personally, I was always like a little bit frustrated because we would do the assignments, we would do the example, but we would always have that big question mark of what went wrong? Like why I was not able to make that happen. So yeah, it was really good. Thank you again.
You're very welcome. See you, Alonso. Thanks. Yeah, it's it's one of those things where when you're doing these kinds of things, I say this all the time, like almost all the time that you're going to have problems, it's probably going to be, most times it's a spelling mistake or a grammar thing. You missed a bracket or something, right? But sometimes it comes down to, it is and this happens a lot too, is it comes down to, you get overwhelmed, right? Especially when you're looking at code that gets like something like this, that can overwhelm you. And even just like, okay, rewrite it, right? It's overwhelming. And so you kind of get in the idea where you say, oh, maybe I have to add a display of flex, or maybe I need to do a grid flex of property cat nose. I don't like, who knows, right? Like, I mean, you get confused very quickly. So the best thing to do is when things just start going haywire, here's what I do. I go like this. I say, okay, stop, reset. And I say, okay, I'm trying to affect the footer form. I'll go back and I'll say, okay, is that what I'm trying to affect? And I'll look at it. If I need to make any changes in here, I will. And then I'll say, okay, I'm ready to go. What do I need to do? What's the best tool for the job, right? And I can go forward from there. You're very welcome. Yeah. And that's helpful for me, is I don't ever delete it. I just delete it. Like obviously when the code is done, everything's working, but I keep that right until I submit. I keep that in there so I can always refer back and see. And that way I can say, okay, oh, you know what? I know once you start writing it out again, display grid, whatever, you can start seeing where you went wrong. And you say, oh, I didn't think about that. Like I have way too much stuff. Like if you had position relative in here, like why would you need that? You added it and you forgot later that you just don't. So as you start rewriting the code, you say, I don't need that. And you can remove it. And then a lot of times you'll say, it'll all of a sudden everything will jump back into place. And you say, well, that was it. I made an error in there that didn't need to be there. Or there was a margin somewhere, right? This inspect tool is always helpful too, right? Going back and saying, well, why is that like that? Oh, because when I hover over it, see the bottom, there's that orange space. That means there's a margin. Or if I hover on that and I see the green, that's because there's a padding, right? So little things like just going down to your smallest step, but try not to get overwhelmed. And guys, don't ever get overwhelmed to the point where you're like in tears, or you're pulling your hair, or you're starting to really stress. Just take a break, step back, give me a call, like we can talk about sports or something. I don't know what, don't it's just a grade and I'm here to help you, right? So just like, we'll chat about it. Ravi.
Yes, I'd just like to add, it's not a question, that the VIA Visual Studio Code actually would detect if there's any error by giving like a red highlight. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, sure does. It also tells you if there's an issue like that. You see it's black. It doesn't know what that is. If I hover over it, it's kind of expecting the grid, but see the coloration is an important part. You got to be careful. Sometimes it can be iffy, right? But you get used to looking at the color pattern. If I'm missing a bracket, if I do that, get rid of that bracket, I start getting error wiggles, right? So I know there's an issue. Actually, I think it actually shows you an error here too. It shows you in the slide bar, and it shows you in the code inspector, the code map. Let's see. Since you have a lot of experience in the industry, do you have some extra suggestions for people who want to join web dev without prior profession? Yeah, I practice lots. You need to get passionate about it, like anything else, right? If you love photography, get a camera, start taking pictures. If you love baking, get yourself a mixer and buy some flour, right? In this industry, the best thing, I'm going to show you guys a really great place, CSStricks.com. CSS tricks. No, don't go. I don't know what it looks like. It's CSS tricks. I was absolutely going to destroy my computer. This is a really great site. It's got articles, got everything else, and you can go to the articles and read. Cool. Look at this. How awesome is that right out of the gate, right? It's going to explain commenting for you and give you some information. But just go around and look. Also, this is a good one, CSS inspiration. I get inspired by everything. I'm not copying, but I'm getting inspired all the time. See you later, Kevin. Thanks for coming. Appreciate that. I'm glad it helped out. Anytime, guys. Yeah, so I can go in here and I can take a look. I can click and I can say, okay, let's take a look at what people are looking at. Look at that. That's slick as heck. Slick as heck, guys. You can just see what people are doing. I really like this left, right. That's kind of cool. You know, nice menu on the side. So, but I mean, you can right click, you know, I'll tell you guys, I know what you guys are capable of. So if you submit to me something that's way over if you're batting way over your weight or whatever, I'm going to be like, okay, you guys, come on, you didn't do it. But with that said, I mean, if you want to take a look, I don't know, maybe it's useful or not, but the thing is you can look at layout, look at design, see what people are doing. Like I like guitars. So I would say, okay, I'm going to go to Gibson.com. Right. And I might say, okay, because I'm just interested. It's interesting for me to look at this website and say, oh, I like how they've done this, or I like this layout style with these big buttons or something. There's so much inspiration out there. Another one I use is something like Template Monster, a place where you can go to buy themes. Right. And here you can look. So I'm going to look up, I don't know, HTML5, I think HTML. Or actually, no, there's a link right there, HTML. And I can just kind of go through and say, okay, what's a good website in here? Like, I like the look of some of these sites. Like here, this is cool as a farm website. And I can just look at it for inspiration. I'm not going to copy and paste anything from it. I'm going to look at it for, there we go, inspiration. I'm just clicking through, like whatever, right? Super nice, right? And I say, oh, I love this idea of doing this thing. Or like, I love the way that actually these cards look really nice. Look at that. And then it can challenge you to say, well, how am I going to accomplish that? And then you can open up a code pen or something and just start playing. Okay, I know this is going to be a div. You guys are going to learn about animations next week, and doing this is so easy to do. You're going to say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need a transform scale, and then, like change the background color, and that's it. And then you can, once you've done it and challenge yourself, everything you're adding to the toolbox. So inspiration is really important. This is a super nice website, actually. I'm not going to lie. I really like it. Anyway, but get inspired, don't copy. And yeah, that's my advice to you. And don't be afraid to learn. You're always going to be learning in this industry. Always, 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 always. Things change. Okay, anything else, guys? I love doing this stuff for you guys. Hopefully it was useful. I just want you guys to know I'm accessible. Last semester, I had a really rough semester, butting heads with my students and stuff. And I really stopped loving teaching, and I love to teach. I love being helpful, and I love talking about web design. So I'm trying to bring that back. This has been really helpful for me. So thank you guys so much for coming and getting involved. And I will see you guys another time. We'll try and set up another play date like this, something like that. And send me questions if you have them. I'm accessible, guys. And have a great weekend. Stay safe. You're very welcome, guys. If you recorded this, please delete it. I don't want to have to rewrite this assignment. It's actually a pretty useful assignment, right? So you guys enjoy your weekend. No, you. See you guys. You're very welcome. Absolutely my pleasure. Anytime. Cheers, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, you guys are the best. Thank you so much. Amazing. You're very welcome, guys. Have a good weekend. I'll stop sharing. See you guys.